Hello friends, this is your friend back with a new fanfic. What if Kaguya's legacy was revealed and Naruto built a harem with Kaguya? If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, let's start. Chapter 1 Born in Darkness. Reincarnation is the dream of countless people, so many dreamed of another chance, another life. Entire religions were centered around it. And even if one isn't very religious, just the amount of people reading books, watching films, or playing games and silently wishing to reincarnate into those worlds was surely staggering. And why wouldn't it be so? Who wouldn't want another chance, a better or more exciting life, a more exciting world? To become a god or something damn near it, to have all their dreams fulfilled. Yes, reincarnation is a dream, though it's not the lone dream. Transmigration is just as good. Everyone just wants an adventure, to enter into a once fictive world and take it on, to be hella overpowered. Sometimes, if something sounds too good to be true, it's because it is too good to be true. Why do I say that? Why be fucking cause I got lucky enough to transmigrate into a cool new world and get cool new powers, to be the most overpowered person for miles. I, a normal boring ass person, died a boring ass dead and entered into the world of Naruto. The world is filled with people with superpowers, with eyes granting you broken powers, creepy snake people, and brainwashed child soldiers. Sounds like a dream come true, right? Well, wrong. Why? Because I'm overpowered as fuck. That's a good thing. It would be. If I wasn't fucking Kaguya Otsutsuki. And if I wasn't finding myself sealed inside the fucking moon. That's right, I just started my second life, and it's already over, trapped for the next 1,000 years inside the moon. Only to be summoned outside and then fated to be beaten by a couple of stupid teens. Well, even if I can somehow avoid the last part, I'm still stuck inside this damn seal formed by my disloyal sons until my only loyal child Zetsu frees me in a millennium. I'm not sure if the original Kaguya was awake while inside the seal, though I kinda doubt it. I think she was meant to be unconscious, and me taking over was what caused me to wake up. It would have been better to just sleep through all this, it would likely save me from going mad due to being trapped here for that long. But at least I can confidently say that, yes, I'm overpowered as fuck. I have all of Kaguya's memories. Well, I guess that's normal since I am Kaguya now, and I know that there is no way I should have lost to my sons. Sure, they had a few tricks up their sleeves, like that cursed sage mode. But it honestly shouldn't have mattered much. I, Kaguya Otsutsuki, am a god. The power to make entire dimensions at will. Sure, that power might have been nerfed in the anime, but in my memory, that power was truly a god level 1. Amanamanaka is the power to manipulate space to the extreme of making dimensions. And in its lesser form, it is just perfect and instant teleportation of myself and anything else. With that, it would be easy enough to deal with any situation, and even if I couldn't, I could still run. Honestly, I couldn't really blame Kaguya for losing. Kaguya didn't know the first thing about using these powers in a fight. Kaguya hadn't fought a lot of high-level battles, so she, and therefore I, lacked experience. Not to mention some powers like all-killing ash bones, which was a truly deadly one-shot kill, just weren't things I could easily use, practice, or play around with, much less use them to their limit in a battle against someone I didn't want to kill. And yes, the old Kaguya hadn't wanted to kill Hagoromo and Hamura. I had held back so much it wasn't even funny. And the combination of holding back, and not being able to properly use my powers in a fight had resulted in my current situation, sealed inside the moon. And yes, I couldn't and wouldn't blame the old Kaguya for losing, even if one gains an innate knowledge of one's bloodline abilities upon waking them, that doesn't really translate to combat-ready power. It took training, experience, and sparring, which wasn't easy to come by when one was a goddess among mortals. So yeah, Kaguya wasn't some master of combat, neither then nor now. After all, before becoming Kaguya, I was just a normal person, never even been in a fight. I knew nothing about fighting, so yeah, that was still a major weakness. At least now, I understand the sheer power of Kaguya and have a few ideas about how to better use them, which should allow me to blitz down Naruto and Sasuke once I'm free. Plus, I had thousands of years of waiting, so I might be able to figure out something, plenty of time to plan for the future, after all. And I'm bored. So fucking bored. Please just fucking kill me, so bored. Bored, 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 so bored. Being stuck in total darkness is real damn boring. I have no idea how long I have spent. Was that hours? Days? Minutes? Being conscious in here for the next 1,000 years will surely make me go crazy if I don't do something. I will come out here just as crazy, if not more so, than the original Kaguya. I started to seriously go over Kaguya's memories. Her ego seemed to have disappeared, but her memories remained, just floating around inside my head, not fully connected to me. I admit, I was somewhat worried at first that I would end up becoming Kaguya, that my ego would be taken over by her memories, but that didn't happen. Then again, she didn't have the strongest of egos. Kaguya wasn't a bad person, far from it, in fact. Getting to know more about her was enlightening. So very little was known about her, other than a few filler chapters or episodes. She was an unknown. Yet now that I had become her and had inherited her memories, I could somewhat understand her. Well, I could understand her, I was her. It really wasn't hard to understand her when I had her memories. She had her reasons for doing what she did, and well, she did pretty damn well. She came to a world that hadn't known peace for generations, and she gave it peace. She was revered as a goddess for it. She might not have been the best ruler, but I think she did pretty well. If only she hadn't tried to build an army, she would likely have made a peace that would have lasted generations. I also knew everything she did about the Otsutsuki clan. I knew many secrets, and I knew why she was scared of them, though personally, I don't think she had to be. While I had never watched the follow-up show to Naruto about his son, I had seen a few clips of the big fights. I knew about the Otsutsuki members and had a rough idea of their power level. Knowing about what powers Kaguya Otsutsuki had, and what had taken down the others, well, I felt like I was a big shot even within the Otsutsuki clan. While I wasn't the strongest, I was for sure up there. There was no way she should be afraid. I would be welcomed back with open arms. Sure, I would have to prove my power, kill a few fools, but yeah, Kaguya was used to thinking of the clan as powerful, and herself as weak, so even when she got power, she failed to realize just how much she got. Still, all that power would do me little good while I was stuck in here. I couldn't even speak, so no singing. Kaguya had been rather good at singing, so I had hoped to try, but well, thanks to my good sons, I couldn't. Chakra, the fuel of the ninja world. It is the key to everything. It is what separates a ninja from a normal person, giving them the ability to use all their crazy jutsu. And it is all something that was stolen from me, my chakra. The amount I had gotten from the god tree's fruit was immense. And what set different members of the Otsutsuki clan apart? Everyone could eat a fruit, but not everyone was allowed. That was because of the idea that some people would waste them. Not everyone would get the same boost out of a fruit, something easily seen by Kaguya, who became incredibly powerful after one, so much so that it took Naruto and Sasuke, who were boosted up by my son, to take me down. While the other Otsutsuki, who came later, claiming to have eaten many, were easily defeated. Kaguya, was very talented, something I didn't know before I ate that fruit. That was why Kaguya was scared. She knew that people would get punished for eating if they weren't allowed. Yet, I knew she shouldn't have worried. She turned out to be far more talented than anyone had expected. In front of her talent, my talent, everyone else was wasting the fruits. Still, having a fuck ton of chakra didn't help me, not while stuck in here. With nothing else to do, I began to try and see if I could feel the chakra inside me. I knew how it was supposed to feel from Kaguya's memories, but feeling it wasn't easy, or maybe it was, and I just couldn't feel it because of the seal. Still, I had nothing but time, so I continued to attempt to focus inward. Trying to find the sea of power that had allowed me to be known as a goddess before my sons turned against me. It took me a while, though I wasn't sure how long. Time meant very little inside this seal. Nonetheless, I finally felt it, deep inside me, a massive ocean of raw power, endless chakra, countless times more than needed to break out of this seal, yet, to my dismay, it was mostly sealed completely away. The moment I made contact with it, it was like seeing the sun, like coming out from total darkness and being greeted by the sun itself, blinding, powerful, and most importantly, all mine. I couldn't help but feel awe at my chakra. It was beautiful. There was no other way to describe it, it was awe-inspiring and powerful. Yet, the seal was clearly restricting my chakra, it couldn't separate it from me, it was mine, and it wasn't easy to take it from me. I hadn't really understood the original Kaguya's love for her sons until now. That she had been able to share half of her chakra with them was nothing short of amazing. I had the memories of her doing so, but the feelings were clearly muted, likely by their later betrayal. I could hardly imagine doing that, it was so beautiful and without a doubt a treasure worthy of obsessing over. I tried reaching my chakra, hoping that I might be able to use it to break free of this seal and avoid spending the next 1,000 years in here. But it was difficult, from Kaguya's memories, it had come so easily, my chakra had wanted to be used. Yet now, I could barely even feel it, much less use it. Clearly, sealing was a powerful art and a dangerous one to be on the receiving end of. Yet, I had nothing else to do, so I kept on pushing, kept on reaching out for my chakra, attempting to reach it, to move it, to use it. In the end, what was once an endless sea of power was now frozen, solid, and unmoving. After who knows how long, I was finally able to reach it, touch it. But I couldn't move it, so I still couldn't use it. Still, it was some progress, and it emboldened me to continue. I kept pushing, wanting to access this sea of power. And with nothing else to do, I focused on it with a single-minded obsession. Had my seal shattered that moment, I had no doubt I would instantly appear screaming about my chakra, appearing completely degraded, like a crack addict after their fix. I had no idea how long I had been trapped inside the seal, no idea how long I had used to find my chakra, or how long it took me to reach it, but I felt I had been trying to use it for a long while. Nothing much happened, nothing at all, until suddenly, it shifted, ever so slightly. And with that, my world changed completely. I can see. End of chapter. So, a Naruto fanfic, another one, well my first, but yeah, there are a ton of those around. Countless bad ones, but also a ton of really good ones. I had spent countless hours reading Naruto fanfic. Both the good, and the bad. It is one of the two big bosses of fanfics, together with Harry Potter for a reason. I watched the anime as a teen, it's been a while, but since then I have never stopped reading fics about it. And I have come to realize who my favorite characters are. Yeah, it's not Naruto or Sasuke. They have countless fics around them, and some aren't bad, but my heart was stolen by others. If it's about the Konoha 12, my favorite is Hinata, she is cute and yet strong. And I do prefer fics that explore that strength. That allow her to shine as I think she should. I also really like Kiba, don't ask. But my true favorites are on the opposite team. I have always liked villains. People who don't play by stupid rules. I hate Batman and his whole no-killing rule, it's stupid. So, in Naruto, my favorites are none other than Kaguya, big surprise there, I bet, and Nagato, or Pain. Nagato is a great character, and the show didn't do my man too dirty, he was a big bad for a long while, and went out with a massive bang. Even if I have a hard time forgiving him for what he did to Hinata. The only one brave enough to stand up against him, that is what real strength of character looks like. And then there is Kaguya, the final boss of the original show. And what a twist. Who had seen that coming? Yeah, no one, because she had almost no setup, she was kinda bad. Everyone was pissed at her, how dare she steal Madara's thunder. Everyone looked forward to that fight, and then she just shows up, makes a fool of Madara, and then gets herself defeated like that. Yeah, that was such a letdown. She had a ton of potential, but it was wasted by bringing her in from out of nowhere, and then defeating her like that, never giving her time to grow, to show herself off. It's a travesty. A crime. Unforgivable. Oh sorry, I was thinking about Boruto, because, fuck what a shitshow that is. But Kaguya still deserves her redemption, and a few good fics out there did it somewhat well. Though a lot of people either use her as a villain or a wife. Few takes her side of things. This fic comes from the desire to give her a chance to shine, but I am not the author of Naruto, so I can't do that. At best, I can give the role and name of Kaguya a bit of love. Make a new, better one, because the one we got just didn't live up to her potential. Among all my ideas for a Naruto FIC featuring either Kaguya or Nagato, they always focused on the struggle, Kaguya's ceiling, Nagato's broken dying body. And the idea of someone having to struggle around that weakness to truly shine. Naruto himself is a funny one, he seems to start with nothing, having to fight his way up with nothing but an unwavering will and bright smile. But we all know that it is bullshit. Naruto isn't the tale of hard work winning over talent, because Naruto was given everything he needed to win from his birth. All he needed to do was make friends with the fluffy fox living in his stomach, and he was unbeatable. Sasuke just needed to get angry enough, and his eyes gave him all the power he could ever need. But I have also read enough fics about someone starting from something, and working their way to the top step by step, so what about something different? I like that, either someone strong, but unable to fully use that power for one reason or another. Maybe a desire to be a good king. To allow her people a chance to achieve something themselves. Or maybe because while they possess great power, they also have some great challenge they must overcome, like a crippled body or sealed up. That is this story. Someone born into Naruto, or transmigrated, right into the most powerful being in the world, and then curse them with bad luck, having them somehow overcome that to achieve true greatness. From this point on, I will talk about my future plans for this story. It might contain a few spoilers, so if you don't want that, skip this, read the story, and maybe come back after chapter 10. Warning given, now let's go on. For this story, I'm planning to have it in a few phases, not kingdom, magic, mutant, space, or cosmic. Curious what those are about? Well, do I have a story for you? But here, it's supposed to roughly be taijutsu followed by ninjutsu and finally, dojutsu. Those are basically the three main powers in Naruto. Everyone starts with taijutsu, hitting people, kicking people, that's the start, always. Then, they move on to ninjutsu, spitting fireballs, fire dragons, water dragons, and spinning chakra balls. And finally, it's all about the shiny eyeballs. This story will also follow the same route, going from hitting things to hitting things with other things and then getting godlike eye powers. There will also be romance. So far, I have two different male love interests, yeah, male. Because Kaguya clearly isn't gay, she had kids with a guy, she is into guys. No matter what countless Yuri fics try to say. On that note, this story will have a secondary set of chapters, not all, but a few chapters might have 8.5 version, which is just a version where more mature topics are touched, it's fully optional. But, if you put me in Kaguya's shoes, sealed inside the moon like that, I would totally jump on every handsome guy that crossed my path. Kaguya won't do that, but she isn't going to be a prude. That said, those chapters might not appear on every site I upload this story, due to rules and such, so if you are interested, keep an eye on the end of chapter notes to find such chapters as they are released. Chapter 2 First Light. Kaguya had showcased quite a few powerful abilities and tools in her short fight against Naruto and Sasuke. While her fighting skills weren't too impressive, she was still fast and strong, but her true strength came from abilities such as the 8 Gods Vacuum Attack, which could reduce even the full Susanoo to nothing. Or the all-killing Ash Bones, the ultimate one-hit kill ability. Or the Rabbit Hair Needles to use her hair itself to shield her or attack. Then there was the Amanamanaka for teleportation and dimension creation, total manipulation of space itself. Summoning technique to summon all manner of monsters to her service, or the expansive truth-seeking ball, her possibly most powerful attack. And all those were powered by the Rinne Sharingan on her forehead. But most forgot her Byakugan, and honestly, I could hardly blame them. It wasn't that impressive in the anime, or the manga, but having Kaguya's memories of it, I can confidently say that the Byakugan is very impressive. Or maybe I was simply biased because the Byakugan broke the darkness I had been trapped in and finally allowed me to see. Thankfully, the Byakugan allowed one to see through objects, so I wasn't just forced to watch the rocky interior of my prison. No, I could see right through it and see what lay beyond. I could see my nursery in all its glory, my world, my planet. It was beautiful, shimmering blue waters, with large green dots all across it. There was more than just the one continent that made up the elemental nations, though they didn't have humans on them, I had made sure of that. As I ate the fruit from the god tree and put all of humanity to sleep with the infinite Tsukuyomi, I began reshaping the world itself. I carved rivers and made lakes, I made the land rich and fertile, ensured that all who would live on it wouldn't lack for anything. I knew that it was the lack of resources like water that caused wars, so I ensured that there wouldn't be such things. With the godly power I had, I shaped the world to my desire and relocated all humans to one giant landmass, and while most were kept asleep, I did slowly awaken them, slowly letting them out bit by bit. This was to avoid a sudden boom in population that the land couldn't sustain. After all, there were no farms and no towns. Everything had to be built bit by bit, and as such, I only let a few people out, enough that I could feed them simply by having trees grow fruit and vegetables spring from the ground. So, for now, there should be nothing but wild animals on the other continents. Still, just being able to see the world again was bliss, to escape darkness. More importantly, thanks to my Byakugan, I could see the world before me in great detail. I could escape boredom simply by watching it as if it were some kind of TV program. I zoomed in on the blue marble before me after trying and failing to look at the moon. It seemed that the entire moon was my blind spot. Normally, I shouldn't have had one. I was Kaguya, and my Byakugan wasn't something that couldn't see a full 360 degrees around me. But the seal was messing with my chakra. The Byakugan was able to allow someone to see in the dark by using our own chakra to replace light. But I couldn't use my chakra very much or move it at all. It prevented me from looking backwards, so to speak, but it hardly mattered, I could see. And that was what truly mattered. Goodbye, eternal darkness, hello elemental nations. Gazing down onto the world was such a relief. One truly can't understand what it is like to be trapped in darkness until one has tried it. And I hadn't been there for a short while either. Sure, it didn't seem to be much compared to what the original Kaguya had to endure, but it was still long enough to drive a mortal mind to utter madness. I was likely only saved from that fate because I could spend the time assimilating Kaguya's mind, not to mention that I had a massive amount of yin chakra, which made my mind far stronger than anyone else in this world. Not that it fully stopped the original from getting her mind tainted due to her carelessness in eating the chakra fruit, but that problem had been solved thanks to my own mind taking over. The amount of taint just wasn't enough to corrupt two minds, so with two minds becoming one, I was now taint-free. Being taint-free allowed me to fully enjoy the view from my room, which was the only decent feature my room had worth mentioning. After all, it was so tiny I literally couldn't move a finger. It was honestly worse than even the smallest New York apartment. Though at least I didn't have to pay rent. I metaphorically shook my head since I couldn't physically do that, and focused my sight onto the beautiful planet. My beautiful planet. I could easily judge that it had been a while since my imprisonment due to the fact that the world wasn't the ruined mess it had become due to the fight with my disloyal sons. For all their talk about saving the world from my evil, they really didn't care about all the deaths they caused in their little rebellion. And since the world looked all pretty and filled with life once again, it was easy to gauge that at least a few decades had passed by. Another big clue as to how time had passed was the fact that there were 9 rather large and bright chakra signatures around the place. This and the fact that I couldn't see either of my sons around told me this was the time past Hagoromo's death. How long was harder to say, since this was a period of time that was barely described in the anime. I could see the different ninja clans, or at least a few of them, though it was hard to be certain about them, since it seemed they were still mostly early on. My son had likely not died all that long ago. The tailed beasts weren't at full size yet, so I didn't think it was more than a century since his death, but it was hard to judge, given I didn't have a good frame of reference for how large they would grow. I honestly had mixed feelings about knowing that at least Hagoromo was dead. They might have turned against me, but they were still my sons, and while I wanted their chakra, I hadn't wanted to kill them, not if it could be avoided. Still, I had to steel my heart. Even after 1,000 years, they still stood against me. Only Zetsu remained loyal to me until the end. The others, as painful as it was, I had to come to terms with the facts that they didn't love me as I loved them. I looked around, and even with my eyes, I couldn't find Zetsu, which was honestly impressive yet also expected. After all, he was made to be able to aid me, which required him to be able to hide not just from Hagoromo but also from Hamura, who possessed the Byakugan. His eyes weren't nearly as powerful as my own, but they were still powerful enough that Zetsu needed to be truly skilled at hiding to be able to stay safe. And given that I had no idea where to even start to look, it wasn't possible to find him that easily. But if nothing else, I had time, likely about 800 or 900 years, so I was sure I would find him in time. Until then, I would take a closer look at the world my sons had built and see with my own eyes what they had turned against me for. Firstly, I focused on the Kyuubi, Kurama, the strongest of the 9-tailed beasts, and half of all the chakra taken from the 10 tails. The reasons for starting there was naturally how big of a deal he would play in the future, so since none of the other known or interesting characters were around, I picked the Tsunere fox. Kurama wasn't as big as he would one day be, but still a lot bigger than in that one flashback to his early childhood. He was also alone, which meant that the tailed beasts had already separated. Yet he wasn't living in the mountains, he was living in a temple, which meant that it wasn't yet the point in time where humans grew fearful of them and still now respected them as envoys of the sage. I could see a small path leading away from the temple and out towards a small village. The trip would likely take a normal person most of the day, though it was a little hard to judge given the distance I was from things. Still, Kurama quickly grew boring to watch. That lazy fox just sat around all day doing nothing at all, so I looked at the village instead. At least humans should be more entertaining than watching a fox. Honestly, this village wasn't all that interesting either. It was just normal people going about their business, farming, cleaning, and making food. Since I could see right through the roofs of their homes, yeah, I watched as they worked on expanding the size of their village. I would likely have to get used to seeing such things, not that I wanted to or anything, just well, I couldn't really avoid it. I wasn't just watching some strangers fucking in their homes like some kind of pervert. Still, there was one interesting thing to watch, even in this small village, something I had never seen before. Ninshu. The art my traitorous son made to unite the people, the fool he was, believing that understanding one another would lead to peace. Even his own sons failed to be peaceful with one another, what chance had the rest of the world? The only reason he had brought peace to the world was because he was strong, the same way I had ended the age of endless wars. If someone is strong enough, others will be fearful and be forced to obey you. I had ended wars, first by capturing everyone in infinite Tsukuyomi. If they were sleeping, they couldn't fight, couldn't kill, couldn't cause pain and harm. After that, I shaped the world, allowing it to easily supply everyone with their basic needs and eliminating the need for war. After that, it was easy enough, I slowly released people. They had made homes for themselves, farmed the rich land I had made, and then I would release the next batch. Sure, I had eventually stopped releasing more and instead turned them into white zetsu. And when people tried to start a war, which they constantly did, though it was mostly those who had once been warriors, or lords, or anyone who didn't want a life of peaceful farming, I just killed them. The war-thirsty had called me a demon, and the people a goddess. That my sons had turned against me at the words of a toad was heartbreaking. They hadn't tried to understand me, didn't even try to speak with me, not before already thinking about turning against me. To think their love for me was so shallow, even while mine so great. Yet, here, my son had shared chakra with everyone, teaching them this ninshu of his. It was a far cry from the ninjutsu that it would one day become. It was mostly just a type of sensing, using chakra to sense the emotions of others, allowing you to understand what they felt. Yet it was hardly enough to stop the war. Already now, not long after my son's death, I could see the signs of unrest. Ninshu wasn't going to stop that. After all, both parties had to practice it to understand one another, and who was going to willingly feel the pain of someone they were about to kill? Yeah, it wasn't likely. It wasn't to say none used it, plenty did, but I had no doubt that it would be fewer and fewer until none would remember it. Soon enough, ninjutsu would replace it, the art of using my chakra to fight. Oh, look at that, oh my, he is practicing ninshu with his own sister, scandalous. End of chapter. So, our hero, Kaguya can see, the world is open to her eyes, no secrets are hidden, no matter how scandalous. The ancient world of Naruto is poorly shown, little is known about it, so I want to show that world, tell the tale about how things came to be, show it from Kaguya's perspective. Our hero is also getting more and more into the role of being Kaguya. She has the memories, the body, the chakra and the fate. She is Kaguya, but who is Kaguya? That's the question, isn't it? Because we know so little about her, and that is what makes her fun. The same reason every Harry Potter fic uses Daphne Greengrass, because so little is known about her, that makes it easy to change her to be what she needs to be. Kaguya is the same, She is Kaguya, but she is my Kaguya, a person who has this strange love for her sons, but also won't be as blind to that love as Kaguya was in the anime. First, we will continue to see the early world and show what I think happened that led up to later events. Chapter 3: Death, War, and Children. After watching the two siblings practicing their ninjutsu together, I started to look for something more interesting: my grandsons. They were a lot harder to track down than I had first expected. After all, I could see chakra, so I figured that just looking for the biggest sources of it, I should find them. After all, there was no way others had more chakra than them. Yet, it wasn't quite that easy. For one, my son hadn't just given chakras to people, he had made many treasures and items brimming with chakra, and he had also placed large amounts of it in the ground. There, it would slowly leak out, fusing into metals, animals, and people. This was the seeds of the ninja world that would one day be the playing field of Naruto and his generation. However, it did increase the possible targets from a dozen to hundreds, making me spend a lot of time tracking them down, which I still did. After all, if there was one thing I had plenty of, it was time. Watching over them had been my main way of passing the time lately. My grandsons, each determined to make his mark, were laying the foundations of what would become entire clans. Not through politics or conquest, but the old-fashioned way: children. Lots of them. The original Kaguya hadn't experienced much, and I was thankful that I was someone from modern times with the internet. If not, well, I fear that I might have taken the role of Hinata and fainted a few times. Those two young boys were certainly enjoying themselves when not doing their thing. By this point, I already had a few great-grandchildren running about and plenty more on the way, and I would likely see another generation soon, the things my poor eyes had seen. Still, when they weren't working on growing the future Senju and Uchiha clans, they were plenty busy with other things. Asura was busy going around, spreading ninjutsu and keeping the peace. Most of the world still followed his word, though there was a growing population of people that instead followed Indra's teachings. That might makes right. Something that I personally agreed with. Indra had come far in making the hand signs. Already he was starting to make ninjutsu. It was still far from what it would be in the future, but slowly he was spreading the idea that chakra could be a weapon. Over the years, I had picked out a few interesting places to look. After all, I needed something to distract me from my imprisonment. The bad thing about being able to see out of my seal was that I now had a very clear feeling about the passing of time. And well, being sealed, unable to move, speak, or do anything, really wasn't very nice. To spend years like this, well, it would likely be a miracle for me to remain sane by the time I got out. Every 2 or 3 years, my two grandsons would fight, and every time, it was close, a tie, and only due to Asura not going all out. Wood's style was truly broken, the ability to just eliminate the movement of chakra. It was sealing, plain and simple. Sealing was broken, utterly ridiculous, and still far from what it would become. The two of them mostly fought with their innate abilities and their father's training. There wasn't much in the way of justice just yet. Even if every time they fought Indra would have improved in his use of chakra, Asura would just use his body, and more importantly Sage Mode, to deal with it. Asura was indeed very foolish, very much like the future Naruto, just going into a fight, using little more than his instincts to fight, while Indra was indeed a genius, but he always fell short of winning. That wasn't to say that Asura didn't improve. He did, massively, and all without barely training, not at all like how hard Indra trained. Yet his efforts were for nothing, he just couldn't win. I think it would end soon. They were growing old, and it wouldn't be long before their peaks had passed, and their twilight began. Other than those, I still kept an eye on Kurama and the village near him. The village had slowly expanded, though it was still far from becoming a town. I wanted to keep an eye on the situation with the tailed beasts to see the moment their roles changed from guardian spirits to monsters feared by all. Though that would likely still take some time, after all Asura still ensured that they kept that position in the hearts and minds of everyone, not to mention that they hadn't grown to even near their full size. It finally happened. Indra died, and his spirit was passed down through his blood. I could barely see it for a moment. I'm not sure if it is because I'm sealed, or something else, but I can't see Indra's soul, or rather his chakra anymore. Asura, who has the body of Hagoromo, is still able to live for another decade or two, Though it seems unlikely that he seems to have lost the will, he will likely die soon as well, and pass on his chakra. It must have broken his heart to hear such curses directed at him with his brother's final words, not to mention what it had all come to. Their fighting had only grown more extreme over the years, ending with this final battle. As I had predicted, Asura, too, died, his chakra and spirit passing on down his blood rather than joining his father in the Pure Lands. With this, the world will surely take a new turn quickly. It had honestly only been the power and charisma of Asura that had kept Ninshu alive and well. Many see little use in it, more preferring the teachings of Indra, the more practical uses of chakra. It was nothing on the level of the justice that would come in the future, but far more saw the future in being able to light a fire, or smash a rock using chakra, than just communicating with others. Still, there were also those that had seen Indra use his hand signs for combat. Those had so far kept themselves in check, afraid that Asura would disapprove of their actions, but with him gone, it wouldn't take long for chakra to become a tool of war. Maybe I was too optimistic about the people. Without Asura and Indra they seemed to have grown unable to advance. They had none to push them to do their best as with Asura, and none to pull them ahead like with Indra. They were just going about their day, unable to accept the fact that they weren't yet free from the sage's rule. Maybe it was the tailed beasts, serving as a reminder of him that still kept them from starting wars. Though that wasn't to say the world was peaceful, without Asura, there was far more conflict happening, so far it was on a smaller scale. But it was only a matter of time before the clans of Indra and Asura would once again fight. Asura might have made it his last wish that they shouldn't fight, but that wouldn't stop them for long. Both clans blamed the other for the death of their patriarch. They hadn't yet taken on the names they would in the future, so far their identity had been tied to their patriarchs, though with those now dead, they would likely need a new one soon, at which point I guessed they would taken on their future famous names. Finally, it happened. The Senju and Uchiha clans were born, the first clans of all. They have also started to fight once again, and as if it were what the rest of the world was waiting for, the entire place instantly became a mess. Finally, I once again witnessed war, my beautiful nursery, engulfed in war. So from within my seal, deep within the moon, I gazed down onto the world below. I saw as they fought and killed, dyed the ground red with the blood being spilled. I felt pain in my heart. I had sought to spare people from the horrors of war, and yet, due to my own sons, I had failed, and now, nothing could stop what was to come. I was wrong. The war is over. Hamura is still alive. He came down from the moon, stopped the fighting between the Senju and Uchiha clans. The two clans, properly cowed under his overwhelming power, quickly set out to bring peace to the rest of the world. The Senju clan stopped the wars and then left, returning to their own homes and lands. The Uchiha clan did things very differently. They also stopped wars, but they didn't leave. They made the lands theirs, declaring themselves rulers of them, and in that way, attempted to keep the peace. I could already foresee it. Soon enough, the Uchiha clan, with its vast lands and population, would grow rich. Even if it were wise and generous in its rule, it was a simple numbers game. They had a vast land under them, so even if they only got a tiny bit of that wealth, they would still be getting far more than the Senju clan. It would spark jealousy among the sons and daughters of Asura. They would then come out and claim the Uchiha to be unjust in their ruling of lands not being theirs, and they would fight once again. However, all that paled at the knowledge that Hamura was still alive. I hadn't expected to see him again. It was strange, both painful, but also joyful. Clearly, deep in my heart, I still loved him. Maybe I even felt guilty. I had, after all, killed him. Even though it had been risky, even though there was a chance he might notice that I was able to look at him, I hadn't been able to stop myself. I had watched him as he spent time back on the planet. He had visited his brother's grave, he had visited the tailed beasts, and the graves of Asura and Indra. He had also passed down his genes once again, something I would have rather not seen, yet it was likely that the future Hyuga clan and Kaguya clan would start from those encounters. There were still no signs of any other clans, but it was surely only a matter of time now. Another clan was born today. I was lucky enough to be looking at the Senju clan when it happened. Well, rather than luck, it was because I had seen the signs of it and had decided to keep a close eye on them this time. As I had expected, the Uchiha had become noble, rich, and powerful, and some within the Senju clan wanted the same. Yet there had been disagreements about it. They had gone back and forth over it for years now, and finally, negotiations had fully broken down. Now, the world had the noble Hagoromo clan. A rather large part of the clan had split off, forming the new clan, which quickly used the name of the sage, their forefather, to claim dominion over a large area of land. Even with this, the Senju clan was still slightly bigger than the Uchiha clan, which was due to Asura having a lot more kids than Indra. With his ability to grow food and even entire homes out of nothing, there had been little holding that man back from growing the family. His kindness was indeed the stuff of legends, and many had fallen for his charm, making him father many children, and therefore ensuring that his clan had a large advantage over the Uchiha. Even if that gap had closed a lot with this new clan being born, it had likely caused a delay in any wars between the two. After all, none of them was too eager to start a war, not while Hamura might still be around. Something which even I couldn't tell, since he had returned to the moon, the one place which I couldn't spy on. End of chapter. So, I honestly don't know if Asura and Indra were alive after the sage died. Here, they are. Why and how? Simple, he had kids late. First he made the world, healed it after the damage of their fight with Kaguya, then had kids, and died when they were adults. Plus, those two had a lot of Kaguya's blood in them, so them living long isn't too strange. So yeah, lots of just Kaguya watching the world, slowly seeing things happen. And yes, Hamura is alive. I like to think the only reason Hagoromo died early was because he ripped out the 10 tails. Chapter 4: Age of Great Clan Nations. War never changes, or so it goes, but war is changing a lot. Chakra is becoming the newest tool of it, and it is changing in ways I can only imagine the invention of the gun did. A few small wars had occurred in the lands not controlled by the Uchiha or Hagoromo clans, which finally pushed for a change in the status quo that had remained since Hamura had last shown himself. The Uchiha clan has never been evil, they have always wanted peace, just like the Senju clan. After all, the break between the brothers Asura and Indra has been over how to cause and maintain that peace. And so, seeing the wars happening outside their domain, the noble Uchiha decided to once again maintain the peace of the world, defeat both sides fighting in the war, and lay claim to their land. The lords of that land weren't happy with that, yet they had been powerless in front of the mighty Uchiha clan. As such, they sought help from the only force able to fight against them, the Senju clan. The Senju clan was also not happy with that. They wanted to be the keepers of the peace, as the great sage had chosen their founder to take his place. They, too, believed that they should continue that work. That, combined with all the other unhappiness they already felt for the Uchiha clan, caused war to once again break out between clans. However, the Hagoromo clan stayed out of it. The war was messy, yet it ended quickly. Honestly, the war wasn't all that exciting. It was the first true ninja war. The use of hand signs was on full display, and the entire thing ended in a victory for the Uchiha clan. It was almost funny. I knew that the final war between the two clans would end with the Senju clan winning and Konoha being founded. And here, the very first war between the two ended almost in the exact opposite way. The end of the war seemed to mark the beginning of the Age of Great Clan Nations, a period never before mentioned in the anime. It was a curious time to witness. Watching the great clans that would one day be wiped out fighting for their nations, now being the ones to build nations of their own. Gazing down from my prison within the moon, I saw the Uchiha spare the Senju clan. Then, fresh from their victory, I watched as they built their lands into a true nation, with themselves as the rulers. It was really just them making things more formal. They had been ruling those lands for a while now after all. Then, the other noble clans did the same. The Hagoromo was quick. They had always wanted to copy the Uchiha's success, and they wasted no time, cutting out territory for themselves. Then were the clans of my other son, the clans of Hamuras. The Hyuga clan, blessed with my all-seeing eyes, there was none in the lands who could deny their noble birth, and all stayed clear of them, knowing that their ancestor had been someone of great power. The Kaguya clan came next, the clan of my name, my blood, and my bones. Diminished as they might be, the power of their Shikatsumiku made them a force to be feared. And they lacked any of the madness that would one day bring them to their knees. The Senju and their pride made them the last clan to finally make a kingdom of their own. However, it also didn't take long for it to flourish. For while the clans might all diminish in the future, this was their very peak. That point in time, they held their world in their hands, where being a noble ninja clan truly meant something. The Senju clan gave birth to genius after genius possessing the wood style. I couldn't personally judge if they were the reincarnation of Asur or not. But they were a blessing for the small kingdom all the same. With the power to grow trees came an abundance of fruits and flowers, which also meant rare dyes, which, in the end, meant coins and gold. Their entire territory was filled with uniform wooden houses, and every stream had strong wooden bridges that allowed for easy passage. It was a kingdom of abundance and ruled by kind rulers who easily shared the wealth with their subjects. The Uchiha clan didn't have the wood style, but they had their Sharingan, and since the blood in their veins was still strong and pure, they could awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan easily enough, and all without the issue of blindness as well. This made them powerful, so they often used force whenever they encountered any problems. Fighting was their language, but behind that was a deep love for their family. The Sharingan allowed them to clearly remember the good times, so they often grew very obsessed with them. Should anyone threaten the peace, they would face the full might of the Uchiha clan. They were shaping up to be some real tyrannical rulers. Yet, other than that, the Uchiha clan was also the forerunner of making ninjutsu. The other three noble clans didn't really have anything that special going for them. The Hyuga clan was already getting lost in their noble lineage. They weren't bad rulers, but they also weren't the best, though maybe that was the best kind of rulers to be. The Kaguya clan, on the other hand, was already proving to be poor rulers. Maybe it was this generation, but they weren't doing great, only their power allowed their nation to remain as it was. There still weren't any other ninja clans at this point in time, but then again, such a thing would likely take a while longer. After all, not everyone could have my blood in them. I still kept an eye on the Biju, the then monsters made of my chakra. They were still small, still worshipped by people, though few looked to them for wisdom, most turned to their rulers instead. Still, the first village near Kuruma continued to draw my attention. The place had grown over the years, and the people had made a better road leading to Kuruma, letting them easier reach the fox and asking for wisdom. The primitive people treated him almost like a god, or at least a divine spirit. Which felt right to me. It was only right that these mortal humans treated someone powerful like that. Dear little Kuruma seemed happy with all the attention, even if he tried to act cold. He was doing his best to appear dignified in front of his little worshippers, but as soon as they left and he found himself alone, he would show me the most amusing sights. He was still far from his future size, but he wasn't tiny anymore, so it was an amusing sight indeed to see him roll around acting all embarrassed over what he had done and said. Too bad the fun was kind of ruined by this nagging feeling in the back of my head, urging me to regain my lost chakra, of which a lot now made up the nine-tailed fox. However, the feeling wasn't too difficult to ignore, though I feared that if I remained trapped in here for 1,000 years with nothing but that feeling, I would get lost in it, become the very Kaguya that left the moon in the anime. Thinking about that made me once again look around for two very elusive targets. Two people I had yet been able to find. Zetsu and Ashiki. One being my own loyal son, made from my will and chakra, entrusted with the mission to free me. And Ashiki, he was bad news. I had thought him dead, at my own hands. Yet he had survived, that much I knew. However, I had never watched or read anything about the future beyond my own fall at the end of the Fourth Great Ninja War. However, I still knew a few things that were to come, including what I had always feared, the descent of other Otsutsuki members. Of those, the strongest was, no doubt, Ashiki. He was apparently the final boss of the anime after Naruto. And he was worthy of such a thing. Had he not been taken by surprise, there was no way I could have defeated him. Now, he was also not supposed to be that strong. After all, the old me from before I consumed the chakra fruit was able to almost kill him. And yet, most people from the future couldn't even harm him. I think I remember that he somehow had made his own sacred tree, and grown his own chakra fruit in secret, which would explain how he could get such a power-up. I very much wanted to find him, and to see what he was up to, so I could be prepared for him, and kill him right away as soon as I get out of this seal. And hopefully, avoiding him being able to do anything to stop him. Yet I was having no luck. The same was the case with Zetsu. I was fairly sure he was hiding around the Uchiha clan, making his moves in the shadows to try to get his hands on a Rinnegan. Though I still hadn't been able to find him. He might have been spooked by Hamura, making him hide all the more from the sight of the Byakugan. Even then, the world was a big place, and there were an endless number of interesting things to see. Another new favorite was up in the cold and snowy north. Up there, I might have found the birthplace of the Yuki clan. There still weren't other bloodlines than my own, but I knew that wouldn't last forever. In the future, many others will learn the secrets of chakra and master it in new ways. Using two elements together, and using chakra like that, somehow upgrades their bloodline, allowing their children and their children's children to do the same thing. And as such, a new bloodline clan would be born. That, however, was all in the future. For now, there was just this little woman who had found some clever ways to use my chakra. Given how far away she and her people lived from the new clan nations, the ways they used chakra were still primarily based on Hagoromo and his ninju rather than the early ninjutsu of Indra. Every day, this poor woman would have to wake up early and clear a large amount of snow and ice out of the way. She was using the chakra to help her, covering her hands in a layer of chakra and pushing snow and ice aside with ease. She could move more snow with just her hands than most men could using tools. And in time, I was almost certain I could see her chakra taking on a cold attribute. It wasn't ice style since that was the merging of wind and water nature, but perhaps it was this cold nature her chakra was slowly taking on, which would eventually help with that merging. Seeing this woman, and the possibility of the new bloodline, gave me an idea. Sure, I might be trapped inside this damned seal, unable to do anything more than use my Byakugan to spy on the world below. But it didn't have to be just that. Trapped in here, I had more than enough time, not just to fight off boredom, but to study chakra itself. My abilities were undeniably powerful, but even so, there were plenty of techniques used by weaker shinobi that I didn't have. That was unacceptable. Everything stemmed from chakra. So if I could truly understand it, its nature, its flow, its limits, I could unlock abilities beyond even what I once had. And when I finally break free of this damned seal, I won't just be strong. I'll be prepared. End of chapter. So, more clans show up, which, yeah, that is going to happen. But mainly, clan nations. That's the important thing here. What happened after the sage passed away? Well, we know the clans start warring, but before that, nothing. That's not good enough for me. The clans were powerful back then, immensely so how did they not take power? It is very much human nature to desire more, to be greedy, to want something, and when you have superpowers. Yeah, nations, big clans ruling the land, that's the conclusion I came to. And now, we all get to watch it. Honestly, I would be interested in writing out a story about that, but for now, Kaguya still needs to escape the seal, and well, while she isn't sure how to do that, she is getting ideas about what to do while inside it. Chapter 5, The Birth of Lesser Clans. Looking down at the Uchiha clan and trying to learn their jutsu wasn't as easy as I had hoped it would be. All I could do was see what they did, see the hand seals and how the chakra moved through their bodies. Being unable to try it myself meant I had no idea if I was doing it right. I couldn't train, couldn't get a feeling of it, all I could do was commit everything to memory. Thankfully, it wasn't too hard. The huge amount of yin chakra I had vastly improved my memory over what a normal human might have. Still, it was something to keep me busy, watching them invent their weapons of war, the tools of the ninja trade, even if there was no such thing as a ninja yet. It was an interesting experience, watching the ninja world of Naruto, without either ninjas or Naruto around. I would get to see the birth of the whole ninja part of this world, which I was greatly looking forward to. The world was just so very different from what it would be in the future. The very fact that ninjas weren't a thing was just odd. Yet it made sense. Ninjas were, in the end, just mercenaries, and there wasn't yet a real need for that. One thing that was making me really curious was how the great clans went from being rulers of land to working and dying for rulers of land. It had never made much sense that normal, powerless people were in charge while beings such as Madara walked around with the power to level mountains. Why didn't they rule the world? Why work for others? Right now, the Uchiha clan is the greatest and biggest one. They ruled vast lands, and they weren't doing too badly a job. So what would go wrong? I didn't know, but I would find out soon enough. Until then, all I could do was keep an eye out for anything interesting or useful, try to see if I could spot Zetsu or Ashiki. And so, I continued to watch the world move along, my legacy all but forgotten, the legend of the rabbit goddess slowly being lost to time. Only the glory of Hagoromo remaining due to his children, the Uchiha and Senju clans spreading it. The Hagoromo clan wasn't far behind, taking even his name as their own, using it to legitimize their rule, not that they really needed it. Being able to use chakra was still seen as a noble trait. Those skilled in it didn't just have the ability to do things normal people could never hope to do, but they also gathered respect, bordering on worship, from the unwashed masses. It really was hard to not see the people of this time as lesser beings. Their behavior was just so primitive. The great clans were better, with the Hyuga clan being the best overall. They liked to keep clean, washed themselves, and their clothes a lot. They liked to keep to themselves, not dealing with the people of their lands unless they had to. And honestly, I couldn't blame them. Without running water, it wasn't easy to wash up, so I couldn't really blame the dirty masses either, but I was glad I couldn't smell anything. Still, the Hyuga clan had a problem. They were weak. The Hyuga clan had never been shown to be very strong, and at this point in time, they really weren't. For a clan with my blood, they really hadn't been blessed. My own Byakugan was powerful. At my peak, before the ceiling, I could crush buildings and reduce my enemies to a pool of blood just with my eyes and chakra. The Hyuga clan, however, couldn't do any of that. While their eyes were far purer now than they would have been during the time of Naruto's life, they were still unable to truly use them. They just didn't have enough chakra. While my sons had passed down other things to their own children, my Byakugan no doubt had great potential, but it also had the biggest requirement for its use. Normally, it would do little but allow one to be nearly all-seeing. And the Hyuga clan indeed had that. They could see far and wide, and none could hide from them. A dozen miles out, they could see everything clearly, none could sneak up on them. Yet that mattered little as they had nothing else. This was long before they would make the gentle fist style, so they really had no real way of using their eyes. None truly knew this yet. Everyone still remembered the way Hamura ended the fighting, they remembered his power, and they feared it. The problem was that the current Hyuga clan had none of their forefathers' strength, they lived on his reputation at all. That wasn't to say that many could beat them, they had more chakra than most, and that did allow them to be faster and stronger, but without many powerful jutsu, they had very little in the ways of using that chakra. The Byakugan was more than an eye that could see far, it was so much more. It allowed one to manifest chakra, to amplify it. With the Byakugan I had been able to use things like the 80 Gods vacuum attack. An attack that had torn apart the full and final stage Susanoo like wet paper. The attack was just using pure chakra, yet without the Byakugan for support such an attack would have cost tens of times the chakra. So, the Byakugan was strong, but only if used right, and the current Hyuga clan didn't have a way of using it. And they wouldn't until they came up with the gentle fist. I couldn't help but worry that something might happen, and I knew something would. There was currently no such thing as a main and branch family, so something was bound to change in a major way. Still, for now, they were fine. As long as they didn't get in a fight with any of the other major clans, nothing could really harm them, at least not until more clans came about. For this was the age of blood clans, and none but those mattered. Seasons came and went, and the world continued on. Nothing major happened, just more of the same. The tailed beasts all continued to grow larger, the great clans continued to grow in wealth and power. The Uchiha continued to be at the forefront of making jutsu with their hand signs. One of the newest things was the establishment of lesser clans. At this point in time, things were pretty simple. There were the clans and the rest of the people. There were the elites and the poor fools working for them. So naturally, those people wanted to reach the same level as the clans. I had expected the first other clan to be the Yuki clan, given that I had seen someone gain a cold attribute chakra. Yet that wasn't the case. The first people to call themselves a clan were a small village living near Kokuo, the five-tailed beast. I hadn't paid much attention to things, not until I noticed something was off at the Uchiha clan. Within the main house, or rather the main palace of the Uchiha clan, there were some rather curious guests. Sitting in the main hall, the current head of the Uchiha, a person with the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, talked with 3 people who all had one common trait. Laying next to them were wolves, not just normal wolves, but some with chakra. It was almost painful to see my chakra within animals of all things. It didn't take much to figure out that what I was seeing was the birth of the Inuzuka clan. No doubt there to seek some kind of approval and recognition from the mighty Uchiha clan. I was surprised that the dog lovers were the first clan to rise without a bloodline inherited from me. Yet I could understand how it came to pass. Other clans needed time for their chakra to take on attributes and for them to make entirely elements. The age of ninjutsu hadn't yet come, and the primitive jutsus made by the great clans were a far cry from what they would be in the future. So, those clans were still a bit out, and the Inuzuka clan was simple in its nature. It was just people living with canine companions, something humans had been doing for a long time. What was different here was my son's ninshu. The ability to use chakra to facilitate communication and understanding. Here used between animal and human, rather than between humans. Unable to hear what they were saying, I had to rely on reading their lips and expressions, and guessing a bit. But, while not perfect, it was still enough to give me an idea of what was going on. Apparently, the village had conceived the idea of becoming a clan due to its way of life with pets or companions. They were a pack, and they weren't far from a clan, at least, that was their idea. They had then gotten the approval of one of the great beasts, which I assumed to be Kokuo, and now sought the Uchiha's approval as well to become a true clan. It was no doubt a historical moment, and I was glad I managed to catch it. It wasn't every day I managed to see something this big. Most days were boring, with little interesting happening. It also seemed that the first clan head of the Inuzuka clan hadn't come empty-handed, he seemed to be bringing a little something to sweeten the deal. If my interpretation wasn't too far off, what they were bringing was the secrets of using chakra to communicate with animals, which was likely the precursor to the summoning jutsu. I was aware that the Uchiha had multiple contracts, so it made sense that they got in on the market early. Something to keep an eye on anyway. The meeting continued for a few days, with many Uchiha meetings behind closed doors. They might have had a rather unflattering end, but the current clan wasn't foolish. They understood very well the weight of the decision before them. Currently, all clans could draw their bloodlines directly back to me. Though most people knew nothing about that and just focused on my sons alone, ignoring the fact that they had to come from somewhere. If the Uchiha granted someone else, someone without those blood ties, the recognition as a clan, that could cause long-lasting ramifications. So, they took their time to carefully consider everything before making a decision. Eventually, the decision came. The Inuzuka clan, with their unique bond to their wolves and their newly developed techniques, was granted recognition by the Uchiha. It was a momentous occasion, a moment that marked the beginning of the era where clans could rise without direct descent from my blood. And much as I had expected, others took notice of it. The Inuzuka weren't living close to the Uchiha's base of power, but now worked as an extension of it. Being an ally, they were a significant new development. It wasn't just other groups of people with ambition to become a clan that were watching, other clans too saw this as something worth paying attention to. The great clans were already the elite of the elite, rulers of vast lands, yet with this, the Uchiha well and truly became superior to another clan. Since they had now promoted someone else to the status of clan, that meant that they had raised their own status to above that, becoming truly a great clan among clans. If I wasn't wrong, what I saw seeing now was the stones being laid for the next great conflict among clans. End of chapter. Yeah, the Inuzuka clan is born, guess you all didn't see that happening. But really, it felt right. As Kaguya said herself, their clan is simple, just living with canines, and getting close to them. Nothing else but a bit of chakra thrown in. This is still the early stage of things. Clans slowly find their identity, their strengths and weaknesses, and their growth. Some, like the Uchiha, are powerful, their blood is still strong, making them strong. Others like the Hyuga clan is struggling, their blood gift weak in combat, and therefore they need more than just that, which will become the gentle fist. Chapter 6 Clans and Their Customs. This chapter contains mature themes and references to historical or cultural customs that may be considered disturbing by modern standards. These elements are portrayed from a critical and reflective perspective, in accordance with S. guidelines. The recognition of the Inuzuka clan sparked a new wave of ambition among the smaller groups and families scattered across the land. It became clear to many that they, too, could rise to prominence if they had something unique to offer. And so, the race to become the next recognized clan began. This competition became fertile ground for new techniques, alliances, and rivalries. After their recognition, I kept a close eye on the Inuzuka clan. They were fascinating in their simplicity and their bond with their wolves. The Inuzuka quickly set about fortifying their position, solidifying their status as a recognized clan under Uchiha protection. This included claiming their own lands. Given that this was still a time before true kingdoms, most land wasn't really owned. People who used land and people who lived on it were normally considered the owners of the land. What you used, you owned. The exception to this was the clans, for they owned vast amounts of land. They truly had small kingdoms under them, controlling and taxing land they didn't use, and everyone else who had tried to do so had been punished. This had so far been a privilege of the clans, and they guarded it fiercely. Now, as a clan, the Inuzuka, too, had the right to claim more land than they themselves used, and so they did. Their territory, already vast, grew many times. They were great runners, likely from spending time running and hunting with their wolves. So, they could run far and claim vast lands, though not the richest. While vast, the population was limited. This all made sense, given the state of the clan in the future Leaf Village. They were far from a powerful clan, but also didn't need anything. Not that they needed much. Looking at them, they lived simple lives. During the next few years, I kept an eye on them, watching them expand, turning from a small village of canine lovers to a clan of them. They received many gifts from other villages around the lands surrounding them. All, no doubt, wanting to know more about how they got the Uchiha's blessings. One thing I got to see was the true domestication of their wolves, slowly turning them into ninja dogs. It would likely take a while, but I could see it happening. The way they molded their chakra together was changing them. The change affected both of them, and even humans were affected. It was a trade-off. The wolves gained the ability to use chakra and greater intelligence, but they grew slightly weaker in return. That strength was, in turn, gifted to their human partners. They gained sharper teeth and sharper nails. They grew faster and stronger and likely lost their own intelligence, though not by much. It would also explain why they would eventually become a second or third-rate clan during the time of the great ninja villages. They simply weren't as smart as they used to be. It all came down to chakra, to yin and yang. They gifted the wolves some yin chakra, and took in yang in return. Yin was of the mind, and yang the body. It would likely take many years to fully show much of an effect, and then it would be much too late maybe if they lived close to the Hyuga clan. They would be able to see the change with their Byakugan and could warn them in time. Yet, since they didn't do so, they had no way of sensing the danger coming before it was too late. But at least they wouldn't do too badly. While many other clans, some even made of my own blood, even the mighty Uchiha clan, would fall, the Inuzuka would remain. Oh, yeah, there it was. I had expected it, feared it, hoped it wasn't so. But no. Among the many things I observed during those early years, there were disturbing practices. Some clans clung to customs that defied comprehension, shaped more by primal instinct than any guiding wisdom. I had hoped the rumors were exaggerated. They were not. I looked away more often than I care to admit. Even omniscience has its costs. But such moments were, thankfully, rare, reminders not of depravity, but of how far humanity still had to climb. This world was a mess. Pulling my sight away from the dog fucking, I looked around for my son, trying to see if he would show himself. Yet, he still hadn't shown himself, likely only showing himself for a few rare moments, short enough for me to miss. I had tried, oh had I tried. But just looking at the Uchiha clan for too long just grew boring. Years of watching them inventing new jutsu had been fun for a while, but everything grew old quickly. Maybe in time, I would be able to watch one place for longer, but for now, I just didn't have the patience for it. Moving my gaze along for anything interesting to watch that didn't involve getting very close with one's pets. I spotted the small village near the Nine Tails. I had watched the place more than a few times over the years, and dear little Kurama wasn't so little anymore. While not yet the size he would be in the future, he was more than halfway there. Larger than even the temple made for him. I had happened onto a moment where some people were approaching him. A small group of villagers slowly made their way towards his temple, where he was sleeping out in front. I had to admit, he almost looked like a demon keeping people away from the temple rather than some divine guide of mankind. And I clearly wasn't alone in thinking that. I could easily see the fear and nervousness of the people as they got closer and closer. I sadly couldn't hear what they were doing, and I never had much training in reading the lips of a massive speaking fox, so I missed out on half of the conversation, but from what I did pick out from reading lips, they had heard about the new clan, and had come seeking a way of becoming one themselves. Given their looks and expressions, they didn't get the answer they wanted. Kurama likely didn't understand why they wanted to become a clan, not understand what it meant to the people of this age. Once more, I would sigh if I could. I honestly didn't hate the fox. If anything, I could understand why he hated humanity. He wanted nothing more than to help, but instead, he was called a demon. He was hated and feared, and the people he wanted to help turned against him, and even then, it wasn't enough. The clan of his father had attacked him, and the other clan also of his father's blood had sealed him away. It wasn't all that far from my own fate. Wanting to help the people of this world and stop wars. And I had done so, giving people peace. The number of lives I claimed to be turned into my army was tiny compared to the many that died due to war. Yet my sons couldn't see this. They were blind to the truth, to the fact that I wasn't evil, I was just. Just because the tax I claimed was in lives didn't make me evil. I had seen countless warlords claim gold, food, and lives. I provided food and protection, and only wanted a few lives. Most happily offered up what I wished for. It hurt just thinking about it. I still felt so much love for them, yet also so much pain at their betrayal. Poor Kurama would soon find himself without a home. The people feared him, were unwilling to come to him for aid, and to make things worse, he did not understand their needs. As such, he was unwilling or unable to fulfill their wishes. It was only a matter of time before they entirely stopped. And once that happened, it wouldn't take long before people forgot about him, his purpose, the things he had done for them in the past. He would just be a demon living nearby, next to a temple of a divine spirit. He would become a demon, and in turn he would grow to hate humans, and truly turn into a demon. Yes, that was his fate, and I would be watching it all. That was really all I did. I watched things, hoping for Zetsu to free me. My poor loyal Zetsu, he worked so hard for my sake. I would ensure that once he did help me out, that I would be ready, that I wouldn't get sealed again, that I would be able to reward him for his hard work. So I turned my attention out wide again, seeking anything useful. A new jutsu, or something else. I might not be able to practice, but I could still learn. And so I watched as the young kids of the Uchiha clan trained. I watched them fight, spar, memorize and practice their hand signs. I watched as the adults trained their Sharingan, watched how the chakra moved inside their bodies, outside them. I knew that the Sharingan was powerful. I personally held its highest form on my forehead, and I knew little of its use. I could use it, do powerful things thanks to it, but the way the Uchiha used it was new. They used their eyes in ways I had never thought about. And there was much to learn. In particular, I was interested in the Mangekyo Sharingan, for the abilities they granted their users were truly broken, and I wished to be as broken as I could be. After all, if everything went according to the plot, I would end up facing Naruto and Sasuke as soon as I was freed, and given the amount of plot armor those two had, I couldn't allow myself to be anything but just as broken. If my son thought his little minions could take me on, then I would show him what it meant to underestimate the final boss. I just hoped I wouldn't look silly trying to use hand signs the first time. Maybe I could learn to manipulate my chakra internally, skipping the hand waving altogether. It would be difficult, but my control over chakra wasn't someone others could compare to. I was the first person on this planet to use it, and it belonged to me. And with my own Byakugan to help I should be able to do it. I remembered that the Nara clan would one day live in harmony with dear, elegant creatures, revered and protected. And yet, after what I had witnessed with another clan, a dark suspicion crept in, uninvited. I hated that I even thought it. Some thoughts are poison, and some knowledge rots more than it reveals. The world was a strange, wild thing. Not all bonds formed were meant to be understood, and not all should be. Choosing to avoid further discomfort, I turned my gaze toward the Hyuga clan. Their pride was unwavering, and their customs, though strange by today's standards, were considered tradition then. Marriages among close relatives were not uncommon in this era. The dangers were unknown, and bloodlines were seen as sacred. To them, purity meant strength. It wasn't malice, just ignorance wrapped in reverence. I was sure such ideas would change, though never fully disappear. After all, even in the time of Naruto, some clans liked to keep it to themselves, like the Hyuga clan, who wouldn't mingle with outsiders in most cases. In today's age, the Hyuga clan is busy. They want to prove themselves to be no less superior than the Uchiha clan, with both of them having dojutsu and all. So they, too, wanted to find someone and raise them to become a clan, allowing themselves to rise above that. Yet they couldn't just lift anyone up, they had to be worthy of it. So they were forced to put in the work to find a family or village that had the qualifications. Chapter 7 Zetsu's first move. The current Hyuga clan was still finding itself, though from what I could see, the current clan head wasn't half bad. His Byakugan was highly pure, and he could see the entire clan all at once, including much of the surrounding lands. Seeing is knowing, and knowing is a power of its own. With a good idea of his clan's current situation, he could better decide on the path forward. He was a smart guy, I would admit that much. His focus was on how to truly secure his clan's dominion. More than merely getting the social status to match the Uchiha, he, too, understood the need to gain the power to match them. For with the Uchiha and Senju having the Mangekyo Sharingan, Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and the wood style, the Hyuga clan was far behind. It was refreshing to see someone acknowledge that and work towards fixing their flaws. In this early time, with the Uchiha hand signs still being new and ninjutsu being few and far between, there weren't many easy ways to gain power. So, he had his work cut out for him. Given that they were able to spot the enemy from far away, a clear path was to be able to attack them from a great distance. The greatest weapon man had made during this time period was the bow, well, if one didn't account for chakra and jutsu. The bow was a great weapon, easy to use and hard to master, yet it offered both range and power once mastered. It honestly wasn't a bad idea, though it wasn't without problems. After all, chakra wasn't easily manipulated over vast distances, so once an arrow was released, it was hard to add chakra to it. So, the limit was pretty much still the distance a bow could fire an arrow. Sure, chakra would allow someone to use a bigger and stronger bow, firing an arrow further than without, but it was hardly enough to take full advantage of the Byakugan. Now, I couldn't fault him for going down that path. The Hyuga clan could indeed enhance their power by using the bow. At least in terms of defense, I could see most people not faring well attempting to mount an assault. It was also a decent weapon for ambushes, though it wasn't the most fitting tool for displaying the noble air they were going for. Still, the clan head decided to go for it and trained not only himself but also a good part of the clan in the use of the bow. And they weren't half bad. Over a shorter distance, they were deadly marksmen in no time. As for their wish to find someone to elevate to clan status, they had less luck there. Within their territory, there just weren't a lot of good options. Something that wasn't helped by their pride, which further limited what would be considered a good option. I spent around 3 years watching mostly the Hyuga and Kaguya clans. Both didn't live too far away from one another, though they were taking very different directions. The noble and mostly peaceful Hyuga and the far more aggressive Kaguya. However, the Kaguya clan did have the foundation to do as they pleased. The Shikatsumyaku that they inherited from Hamura was a powerful weapon. It came with greater strength, chakra, and healing. The warriors of the Kaguya clan were no less powerful than those of the Uchiha or Senju clans. While they didn't target the lands of their neighboring Hyuga, they did expand aggressively, earning them a reputation for being powerful and ruthless. Something that did benefit the weaker Hyugas, since none were willing to believe that the clan wasn't a match for them, which included most within the Hyuga clan itself. Though thankfully, the clan head himself knew the truth, that the Hyuga were far weaker than their sibling clan. Another benefit was that while the Kaguya didn't care much for the people living in their territory, the Hyuga did, and many moved or outright fled to their lands to escape the ruthlessness of the Kaguya. This made the lands of the Hyuga clan all the more prosperous. After all, in this time and age, manpower was important. The only things more important were chakra and food. Still, a few years of those two clans were quite enough. there wasn't much to learn from watching them. I had no use for learning how to use the bow, nor how to use shikatsumyaku. My own all-killing ash bones were far more deadly and wouldn't be used in the same way. Just like one wouldn't use a stick and a gun in the same way, their bones and my own just weren't in the same league at all. No, I truly wanted to learn how these people would use my chakra in ways I had never thought of. In particular, I was interested in new ways to use dojutsu like the Sharingan and other bloodlines. After all the elemental bloodlines were just special ways of molding chakra, and everyone, myself included, could learn such things. So, I cast a wide net, looking all around the world, seeing if I could find any signs of elemental bloodlines starting to form. I didn't expect it to happen quickly, given that ice style was still slowly taking shape. But I wanted to know if any were in the initial stages so I could keep an eye on them from time to time, to not miss too much. By now, the hand signs were all pretty much ironed out, and new jutsu were being made every so often. Though it honestly wasn't anything truly impressive. No, for that I would have to wait longer still. But as long as I could learn the important ones, the rest didn't really matter. Even after spending a few months looking far and wide, I didn't find anything too interesting. And so I once more settled my gaze on the major clans. Watching the Uchiha and Senju go about their things, which involved trying to prove which clan was better without starting another deadly war. Something which they would fail at, thanks to Zetsu, who would ensure that those two clans would fight soon enough. However, I was honestly starting to get concerned because I hadn't seen him yet. It just didn't seem likely that I hadn't seen him yet, given that I had watched over those two clans for so long. Yet I couldn't imagine where else he would be. My only guess was that he was lying low, afraid to start meddling too much while the two clans of Hagoromo's blood were still so strong. Zetsu had been made in a hurry, and his strength wasn't the best. Sure, he wasn't helpless, but he had his flaws, so I guess that while there were too many pairs of Mangekyo Sharingan around, he wouldn't mess with them. After all, he needed someone he could manipulate, which might not be too difficult, but the problem lay in what came next. Gaining the Rinnegan might be easier in this age than in the time of Naruto, but gathering the tailed beasts would be much harder. After all, there were many people who could fight against his tool. Even with the Rinnegan, one wasn't invincible. Much less if they earned the anger of all the other clans. Still, there wasn't anything I could do but watch and learn. And as I did so, I once again seemed to have missed something happening elsewhere. Because suddenly, the Uchiha clan got a lot of messengers coming in. I was tempted to look around, but I also worried that it would just make me miss what was happening in the Uchiha clan. I wish I could record the events and play them back later. But without being able to focus on the entire world, I was forced to pick only one area to watch in detail. And for now, the Uchiha clan it was. And thankfully, it didn't take long to figure out what was happening. Apparently, smaller families, villages, and everyone wanting to be a clan somehow started wars with one another. Trying to claim resources and whatnot to become a proper clan. I couldn't help but think this was Zetsu's work. It did nothing but destabilize the world, something that would benefit no one other than maybe Zetsu. It also explained why I hadn't seen him around if he was messing around with those kinds of people, since I had no interest in watching such boring places. Now, as to why he might have done this, I could only guess that it was because he would have had an easier time acting while the world was in chaos. And that he was likely worried that if things remained as they were, everything would stabilize in its current state. I had honestly wondered about how this stable state of peace would be broken enough to start the warring clan period. It seemed it all started here, with Zetsu. It didn't take long before the current peace was fully broken as war once again broke out. With smaller forces crossing borders to fight and prove themselves, it was only natural that the clans ruling the invaded lands would react. It seemed to start with the Kaguya clan. They already sought war, given how aggressive they were. But they still didn't attack their cousins, which allowed the Hyuga clan to mostly stay out of the war, for now at least. And what a war it was becoming. It seemed that no matter how much some smart people tried to limit things, they just couldn't stop the war from escalating. From the pre-ninja wannabe clans fighting in the beginning, soon enough, real clansmen started throwing around chakra left and right. Fireballs, water bullets, stones, and more soon flew around. The Kaguya clan quickly gained a reputation as bloodthirsty due to the way they would leave no one behind when they passed through. At the same time, the Hyuga clan, who stayed mostly out of things, gained a reputation as aloof, rarely doing anything, yet still doing enough to protect their territory, but only when provoked. I got to see them in action, and they were using their current tactic very well. They were deadly with a bow. Small teams would go out and shoot down their enemies before they even had a chance to see them. They were very different from everyone else at this time. This was a time before ninjas. Here, the clans fought openly and proudly, with no sneaking around. Only the Hyuga clan killed without even being seen. Still, war wasn't pretty, and chakra only made it more deadly. All over the place, entire villages were wiped out overnight. Countless lives were lost day after day. In particular, the clashes between the Senju and Uchiha clans were brutal. The Uchiha, with their mastery of the new jutsu and their Mangekyo Sharingan, were unbeatable monsters. The might of the Susanoo was on full display. Yet the Senju weren't without their own means to fight back. With the sage body and wood style, they were more than able to hold their own. The battles between the Uchiha and Senju grew more intense with each passing day. It was clear that neither side was willing to back down, and the world around them was paying the price. Villages were caught in the crossfire, fields were scorched, and countless innocent lives were lost as collateral damage. The power these two clans wielded was undeniable, but it was also terrifying. It didn't take long before the world focused on those two clans and their fighting. Old rivalries were ignited once more as they found an excuse to fight freely, no doubt helped on by Zetsu from the shadows. The Inuzuka clan had tried to offer their support, but quickly realized that they couldn't measure up against the clans carrying my blood. That clan might be a fine ninja clan, but this age wasn't one for ninjas, not yet. End of chapter. Here we have things getting shaken up a little, war and death. We see more of the clans, getting to see the paths they took or could have taken to reach where they were. And with Zetsu moving in the shadows, it's likely that the world will only change even more soon. As to where we are currently, I would say, halfway towards the Naruto era. So still a few hundred years yet to go. Chapter 8: A clan worth watching. The war raged on for 3 long years, 3 full years. There were a few times when it seemed that it might come to an end. Yet, before peace could return, the fighting resumed. It was during this time that I saw Zetsu's hand, or rather, his work. I never saw him in person, but I noticed a bit of my chakra on someone. Clearly, he was still being careful, hiding away from the clans themselves. Yet, he was still playing his little games from the shadows, using his, or rather my, chakra to manipulate people and ensure the war would go on. I slowly started to see some pieces falling into place around the world, questions being answered one at a time. However, even as Zetsu tried to keep the war going, it was impossible to keep it going for too long. With the current level of power the two clans held, it was just too devastating to have them going at it like this. Even the tailed beasts were paying attention. They hadn't acted yet, likely not wanting to pick a side between the two clans of their father. Someone who did act was the Hagoromo clan, which wished to stay out of the fighting but also found themselves unable to do so since the Senju clan was family. It was funny how quickly they had forgotten that the Uchiha were just as closely connected. Nonetheless, they tried to broker peace a few times, but failed, mostly thanks to Zetsu. It wasn't until the Hyuga clan stepped in and had everyone sit down for a discussion that peace finally returned. Under their lead, everyone sat down and talked about their differences, and while they hardly managed to solve any of that, they all at least agreed that the fighting they had been doing, the deaths, had all been meaningless. They could agree that they were fighting for no real reason. And while everyone wanted revenge for their dead family and friends, they also still had much to lose. However, honestly, I didn't understand why it seemed like the Senju acted so unwillingly to accept the idea of peace. The Uchiha were really generous in their desire to end things. After all, they were winning. After all, the Uchiha clan only grew stronger as they fought. While their blood was pure enough to awaken the later stages of the Sharingan easily enough, the war and deaths following that did allow for even more Mangekyo Sharingan to awaken. Currently there were 16 people able to unleash the horrid might of Susanoo on their enemies, and while only 11 of them fought in the war, it was still enough to crush the Senju if they went all out. And that includes even if the Hagoromo clan were willing to enter the war. In fact, them standing around on the side was likely the only reason that the Uchiha hadn't taken that final step yet. Still, as unwilling as they might be due to their pride, the Senju ended up accepting the peace agreement between all the clans, even if the Kaguya clan was only willing to go along with it due to the threat of all the other clans attacking them. And with that, the war came to an end, and peace returned to the land. Though the war had left its mark, one that wasn't easily forgotten, not with Zetsu making sure it wasn't. One of the significant changes this war caused was how the normal people saw the clans. There was far more fear in their eyes. Having witnessed the power they held, compared to normal people, those of the clans didn't even seem human. The single exception was the Hyuga clan, which, due to acting mostly from far away, hadn't been seen in a negative light. All the normal people knew was that they had kept their lands safe. The other clans did take note of this change, though their reactions were different. The Inuzuka clan didn't care much, they had few people under them. They cared more for their canine companions than anything else, working hard to strengthen themselves and protect their territory. The Kaguya clan, much to my disappointment, cared the least. They saw non-clan people as less than dirt, mere animals. If they didn't like the looks they got, they would kill people. Already now, they were bloodthirsty. And that was before they would really start inbreeding. I didn't like the fact that these people were the ones carrying my name, but I couldn't do anything about it. At first, the Uchiha clan was unsure how to deal with the situation. Their leader was smart, he could see it was a problem, yet he also couldn't solve it. The hard truth was that those who had my blood in them were different from normal humans. In the future, once their blood grew thinner and others learned to master the secrets of chakra, the difference wouldn't be as great. But right now, the difference was like that of a Kage and a Genin, and not Naruto. Eventually, the Uchiha ended up doing as I expected of them. Their pride did not allow them to try to soothe their subjects' worries and fears. Instead, they appeared cold in their future dealings with them, further building a wall. Yet even as the relationship between clan people, or rather, between people who used chakra to fight and others, worsened, many still wished to reach the level of a clan. The next was the Ibarama clan. I honestly wasn't surprised, they just felt right for an ancient clan, not that they were any less creepy. I hated bugs, and they sure loved them, letting them nest inside their bodies like that. If I could, I would shiver in disgust. Yet they had stuck to themselves mostly, getting through the last war without much damage, and now, in this new age of peace, they were ready to make their move. And what a move they made. The Inuzuka had just gone to the Uchiha, but clearly, the Ibarama sought a more balanced approach. They first sent people to the Inuzuka and then to all the other clans, paying their respects and bringing gifts. Though it was clear that they considered the Uchiha to be the most important, the gifts given there were by far the grandest. And without much fanfare, or maybe with a lot of it, another new clan was born. Even in this time when clans weren't seen in the same light as they had before, being one still meant being a ruler of land rather than just another commoner. Being a new clan and one that hadn't really caused much fear during the last war, the first reaction to them was positive. Most of the people now living in their lands seemed happy enough to turn to them for help. That didn't last long. The many bugs quickly caused people to distance themselves. And so another clan with a bad name was born. It was disheartening to see how all their efforts had been for nothing. Yet it was clearly the trend of things. Clans were powerful, but feared. Nothing surprising there, I too had been feared for my power, even though I did so much good. That was just the way of things. The weak feared the strong. The fear bred new strength, which would overthrow the strong. And the new strong person would then be feared. It had been the same with me and my children, and now it was the same with their descendants. Still, it was only mildly entertaining to watch ants scurry around. The only really interesting thing I could see was the invention of jutsu. And so I watched as the clans slowly emerged, as chakra was mastered, utilized, and transformed into rare Kekkei Genkei. I watched it all, and I did my best to learn. I had time on my side. I could watch the steps they went through to invent the bloodline, and the steps to pass them down. With my eyes, I saw their chakra move around their bodies, evolve, and change. I watched, I learned, and I too evolved. It wasn't true evolution, my own chakra couldn't move, couldn't evolve, but my mind expanded. All I needed was to get out of this cursed seal, and I could use everything I learned. Yet, nothing I learned gave me any hope of getting out. So Zetsu remained my best hope. But that remained almost 1,000 years away. Still, time continued to flow like water in a stream, and seasons came and went. Years passed by mercilessly, and bit by bit, I saw the world change once again. More and more clans continued to appear, and they weren't all on the same level. In particular, the Senju was very eager to grant the title of clan to just about anyone. While the Uchiha demanded that each clan possessed a special skill or something that set them apart from everyone else, the Senju had no such standards. They were the ones who granted clans such as Shimura, Sarutobi, Akamichi, Nara, and Yamanaka their titles. Each clan honestly had nothing special going for it, not yet at least. And while 3 of the clans would find their special niche, the other 2 would never really do so. Still, with the birth of more and more clans, their special status also decreased. After all, while the first few clans were direct descendants of my children, and had my blood in their veins, the rest didn't, so their strength lagged massively behind. Due to people's fear of clans due to their strength, most clans took a more hands-off approach to power, allowing others to collect taxes and other duties on their behalf. And each passing year, slowly eroded the clans. Power as those chosen to handle rulership on their behalf, slowly took power into their own hands. It was slow, barely noticeable, I only noticed it happening because I knew it would happen. After all, in the following age, the Warring Clan period, the clans were no longer in power. So I knew this would happen, and I saw it happening. I was honestly amazed that it happened. Given the former position clans had, it seemed unlikely that they would ever allow this, but with generations passing, and clans changed, so did their nature. They had the strength, and they were slowly informed about the problems they needed to solve. And the people who told them of these problems also provided them with money. Over time, I guess it felt like they were being paid to deal with issues. And that then became the truth. Among the clans born in this time, there was one that drew more of my attention than any other, and more so than pretty much all other clans combined. Even watching the tailed beasts became second in line compared to this once clan. That clan was the Uzumaki clan. The clan of Naruto, but more importantly, the clan that would pretty much invent the school of sealing jutsu, while they didn't invent the concept, or the first seals. They would be the ones who understood them as second nature, and who would invent some impressive ones. Including one able to summon the Shinigami itself. Which was surprising in its own way. I had been the goddess ruling this world at one point. Yet I knew nothing of the Shinigami. No tales, no legends, nothing. Back then, the concept didn't seem to exist. So where did it come from? It was all very interesting, though the main reason I watched them was to learn about seals. I wanted to learn everything, learn enough that I might be able to understand the one holding me. If I could do that, then I would have a chance at escaping. And the first thing I learned was that my seal was horrible. It was so very simple, compared to the ones they played around with. Mine was primitive, yet it was also countless times more powerful. Chapter 9. Kaguya's Legacy 9 Kagura Fukatsu no Jutsu. Soon enough, the Age of Clans came to an end, and the Warring Clans period began. The real reason for the shift seemed to be that too many clans were around, many of them weak, and there wasn't enough land for them all. That, along with the weak grip the clans now had on their lands, which at this point was but a formality at most. Things quickly turned to war and conflict. And it wasn't pretty. Because with so many clans, and other nobles who ruled those lands, all wanting money and wealth, there wasn't enough, so war broke out as everyone wanted more. War wasn't without its positives, as tools of war advanced a lot. And given that ninjas were the main fighting force, they grew a lot. Ninjutsu, genjutsu, everything advanced by leaps and bounds. All of which I made sure to watch and learn from. Still, while I might benefit from the war, it didn't mean I approved of it. I had once ended all wars, brought true peace to this world, so it hurt seeing it back once more lost in war of this scale. Still, under the shadow of war, more clans were still born, and for the first time ever, clans fell. Such was the nature of war, it was ruthless and uncaring. And this war showed no signs of stopping. There was so much death and loss. The world changed once more. The once great legends of my sons and their clans were slowly forgotten, in part thanks to Zetsu, which I finally saw. Finally, he wasn't hiding as much as before. Instead, He finally took the chance of the war to set up everything. I happened to see him leaving the Uchiha clan's home. And I could see why he was there. He had changed the stone tablet. And it was a good time to do it. The wars were brutal, so many adults died, and even young kids had to learn to fight, which meant they weren't taught their own history. The perfect time to help them forget the truth and embrace what he wanted. However, the fact that he started his plan so late did make it more difficult. As the Uchiha clan and the Senju, for that matter, had both grown weaker over time. The mixing of blood and the dilution of mind. Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan was no longer a thing, and even Mangekyo Sharingan were rare these days. So getting a pair of Rinnegan was a tall order for sure. No wonder it would take so long for him to get all the pieces gathered together. He needs the Uchiha to be weak enough for him to be able to manipulate, but also strong enough to be of use. Yeah, he worked hard, the poor obedient child. My only obedient son. I wasn't entirely sure how hard he had worked, how much was his doing, and how much was just the foolishness of man. Because not only was my legend all forgotten, but my sons had gone from fact to fiction. None really remember them anymore. At most, Hagoromo was remembered under his title of the Sage of Six Paths, his name long forgotten. And with that, came his own legacy. Peace was long gone, his ninshu was forgotten, even his children, the tailed beasts, had long since gone from divine guides to fearsome demons. The temples built for them turned to dust, their homes gone, their purpose forgotten. But with the downturn of some things, others blossomed. In particular, the once weak Hyuga clan had truly taken on a new life of its own. Finally, after such a long time, they had mastered the gentle fist. It wasn't easy for them, and they suffered greatly. When war began, none were spared, and such was the once noble clan that was attacked, and while their use of sniping tactics did help them somewhat, it wasn't enough to keep them safe forever. The attacks continued, and many were killed. Worse yet, their eyes were taken. And the truth was revealed. Anyone could steal their eyes. Sure, it wasn't quite that simple. They still needed someone able to do the transplantation, but if you had that, you could gain the Byakugan. So, the Hyuga clan experienced a very hard time. Almost all other clans hunted down their members to steal their eyes, and in response, they started to work on a way to stop that. For one, they never went out alone, and always remained on guard, their home turning into a true stronghold. Large fortified walls with towers. Everything one could imagine, yet it wasn't enough, they needed something more. Which came in the form of a seal. A seal that would stop anyone from stealing their precious eyes, and taking the target off of their backs. I was impressed at how quickly they created such a thing, but they were truly desperate, and desperation is a powerful motivator. The seal wasn't very good at first. Any Uzumaki would be able to break it easily, and it was only a matter of time before others, who were even more desperate for the Byakugan, would crack it too. They continued to work on it, refining it over the years, decades, and even centuries. As they did so, a division occurred. Some people weren't marked, mostly because they needed someone around at all times without the seal, so they could test new seals' honor in case something happened to the seals. Initially, this was entirely innocent, involving only individuals who had never entered the battlefield and were under the clan's protection, not sealed. I watched as the main family slowly came together, from little more than a talent in sealing arts and a willingness to experiment. I kept a close eye on the cursed seal, and I knew it better than any living member of their clan. I had watched them invent it step by step, knowing every path they had taken, every wrong step, every correction. I had a plan. I didn't know if it was possible, but it was better than nothing. And while it likely wouldn't let me escape my seal anytime soon, any little bit sooner was still worth trying for. So, with me watching from inside the moon, years passed as clans rose and fell, nations were born and destroyed, and new nations grew old, then broke apart into more wars. It truly felt like the world was afraid of peace, and I grew ever more certain that only I could ensure it, that only ultimate power could tame the wickedness of human nature. Then finally, after centuries of that, I saw them born within the Uchiha and Senju. Madara Uchiha, Hashirama Senju, the newest generation of Indra and Asura, and the most important people in the coming age, but even more importantly for me, was Tobarama Senju, who might just give me the final piece of the puzzle to begin my grand plan. It was interesting, watching them go through their struggle, though it was hardly anything special. I had seen so much war that even the wars they saw in their young lives seemed unimportant. However, I must admit that Zetsu had done well, ensuring that the two clans fought fiercely, while never allowing either to fall, thereby creating the best environment for the Rinnegan. Things got spicy once. One particular fool of the Senju clan, their leader at the time, thought it was a good idea to steal the Sharingan to gain an advantage. And the Uchiha wasn't happy with that at all. They called out to their allies, the Hyuga clan, with whom they shared a decent relationship due to both being dojutsu clans, as well as the Inuzuka clan and Aburame clan. Given that stealing a dojutsu and keke genkai was such a sore topic, they united for a devastating attack, nearly wiping out the Senju clan altogether. Only their arrogance made them show mercy. It could have been Zetsu, but it sure got close. Had it happened, all of his plans would be for nothing. However, it did ensure that people didn't try to steal the Sharingan again. Something happened while I watched those two men go about their whole remaking the entire world. A few years before they were old enough to take over their clans, another clan fell, which wasn't anything special. It happened all the time, but this particular clan was special. The Hagoromo clan, the first clan to be born after the Senju and Uchiha. One of the oldest clans, and one that shared the blood of the Senju clan. They were no weaker than them, yet they still fell in the end. It was a slow end. I didn't keep a close eye on them, but they had been growing weaker and weaker over time, losing too many people in the age of endless war. And in the end, one big attack wiped them out, the few survivors going to the Senju and Uzumaki clans to seek shelter with their distant relatives. It was a sad sight, but it mattered little, especially when Madara and Hashirama took over their respective clans and finally had their epic duel, ultimately leading to Konoha's founding. A lot of this happened very quickly after that, much of which was never mentioned in the anime. For one, the great nations were born. Something like the Country of Fire was just a loose collection of allied nations, but with all the clans joining forces, one family decided to ally itself with the budding village. And rather quickly, all the small nations were united under their leadership, thanks to the overwhelming military power of Konoha. Both clans quickly drew in their allies, and while the Hyuga clan was reluctant to join, they ultimately did so, as other clans living near them began to gather, which slowly led to the formation of Iwagakure. They could clearly see that they only had one choice, to join or be left alone to fend off the combined might of many clans, which even they weren't foolish enough to face. So, rather than suffer a loss before coming crawling to join Konoha, where their old allies lived, they joined up while they still had their dignity intact. That, however, was secondary to what I really paid attention to. Tobirama's research. He was smart, not the most intelligent person I had seen. There had been many people far smarter than him. But he was far more lucky than any of them had been, except for some of the early ones. Because he had peace, now at least. Peace, and something just as important, resources. With Konoha and the Land of Fire established, he had far more resources than anyone else before him, allowing him to push forward with his research. And it was thanks to that I was able to watch as he created one particular technique, one jutsu, that I had waited for more than 200 years. Edo Tensai, the reanimation jutsu. The ability to summon a soul from the Pure Lands and infuse it into a body, bringing someone back to life to a certain extent. His current version wasn't worth much, not compared to what it would become. But it was enough. With the insights from his work, and all my knowledge of sealing from watching the Uzumaki clan, I was confident in my own plan working. And it should be completely without risk. Well, mostly. If I somehow failed badly enough, I might lose my ability to see the world outside my seal, but it should only be a matter of a few decades before Zetsu would free me, in any case, so I could surely handle that without losing what little sanity I had left. And so, while everything unfolded, Hashirama Senju died, and the great nations broke into war once more, I finally prepared myself for my great escape. For the first time in over 1,000 years, I activated my sealed chakra and used every bit of willpower I could muster, finally unleashing my first jutsu ever. Kagura Fukatsu no Jutsu. My very own divine revival technique, and it worked. One moment, I was trapped inside the moon, the next, I felt cold, the first real feeling in so long. And I couldn't help but cry out as millennia of stress were released all at once. I cried. Of course I cried. What else could I do? After so long, so damned long, Trapped in silence, in darkness, in stillness, to suddenly feel again, to breathe, to exist in flesh, it was overwhelming. The air felt too sharp, the light too bright, the sensations too raw. So I screamed. Loud and shrill and undignified, I screamed as loud as my new lungs could manage, the cry of a goddess reborn as a mortal child. "She's strong," I heard a voice say, soft and proud. "Just listen to those lungs." Stronger than her cousins were, came another, older voice, worn but warm. "It's a good sign." I didn't recognize them. Obviously, I hadn't bothered remembering every face of every person I had ever seen. A woman, my mother, I assumed, held me close, her chakra weak and unrefined, yet filled with that protective warmth I had seen so often in others but never felt myself. "She'll be a fighter," the old voice continued. "A child born crying like that doesn't let go of life easily." If only they knew. But none could possibly know that, as of this moment, Kaguya Otsutsuki, the rabbit goddess, is the ruler of the earth. Had returned. Chapter 10 Yuki. The first few days were strange. Not painful. Not terrifying. Just strange. My body felt like a prison again, though this time, not cold stone and ancient chakra seals, but soft skin and helpless limbs. I couldn't lift my head, couldn't form words, couldn't even open my eyes for more than a few seconds without getting overwhelmed. Everything was too much. Sounds were muffled and distorted. Light was a blinding haze. My own body trembled at the slightest draft of wind. I had once soared between dimensions and conjured storms with a thought, and now I startled at the creak of a door. The only true comfort was warmth. A heartbeat. A voice. A scent I couldn't name but instinctively knew. My mother. She held me often. More than she had to, I think. I don't know if it was because I was her first child or if she sensed something unusual in me, but she always seemed fascinated. She'd cradle me even when I wasn't crying, hum little lullabies even when I wasn't fussy. She, in many ways, reminded me of myself, back when I first gave birth. So afraid, so caring. Back then, I was afraid I wasn't loving enough, so I showed them as much as I could. "She has your nose," I heard my mother say softly one morning, her fingers brushing my cheek as I squirmed in her arms. "No," my father replied with a chuckle, "she's got yours. Look at that pout. She'll be stubborn. She's already stubborn. She wouldn't come out until the very last push." They laughed, and I cried again, not because I was upset, but because my body insisted on doing it. Everything was new, loud, overstimulating. Even breathing took effort. "She's loud," my father said. "Good lungs. She's got strength in her already. She'll need it," my mother murmured, quieter now. "This world isn't gentle. Not anymore." That made me pause. The world wasn't gentle. And clearly, it hadn't become any better since I was last in it. Still, I didn't let my thoughts spiral. I couldn't. I didn't have that luxury. I had to be patient. I had waited over 1,000 years for a second chance. I could endure a few more months, or years, of drooling and being swaddled. For now, I listened. I memorized voices. I cataloged names. I marked every word, every gesture, every twitch of chakra I could sense through skin and instinct. The first few weeks of my new life were quiet. Not in the peaceful, idyllic way people imagine. No, it was quiet in the way the branch family of the Hyuga clan lived. Restrained, formal, distant. Our home wasn't large. It was well kept, yes, clean floors, simple sliding doors, a small garden just outside, but it lacked the grandeur of the main compound. No ancestral halls, no ornate silks, no symbols etched into wood to mark bloodlines and legacy. We were a necessary part of the clan. Respected, in a way. Trusted, in another. Owned, in truth. I spent most of my time held by my mother, a woman with tired eyes and hands that bore the roughness of someone who worked more than she rested. Her chakra was modest but disciplined. The first time I felt it, it felt less so, but I shouldn't judge by that. She had just given birth back then. My father had far more, and it was firmer, stronger in every way. He was clearly a shinobi. "She's strong," he said one night, as he lifted me after a feeding. "She doesn't cry unless she needs to. And when she does, she means it." He often mentioned how strong I was, always with pride in his voice, and for the smallest of things. "She'll need to be strong," my mother replied quietly. "Life isn't easy in the branch. Not for girls." He didn't answer. Visitors came 3 days later. Two women from the main house, dressed in pristine robes, their foreheads unmarked. The child? One asked. My mother nodded, lifting me with care. If I could, I would question them. Why ask? Surely they didn't think they were there to see another child. If I could, I would have rolled my eyes at their attitude. The older of the two leaned in, pale eyes scanning me. I didn't blink. I didn't squirm. But I didn't stare, either. I had seen enough kids, had two of my own to know how they react. I could mimic that. Healthy, she finally said, and straightened. No visible defect. No chakra flare. A quiet child. She has her mother's calm, my father said, standing just behind her. They nodded, said nothing more, and left within minutes. There were no blessings, prayers, or talks of potential. They were cold, but not cruel. I knew who they were, or at least I knew their role, and why they had come. It was simple. If I were sick or needed extra care, they would have to assign more resources to my family. That was how the branch family worked. You only had what you needed, rarely more, never less. And that was fine. While I would have preferred being born into the main family, it wasn't something I could control. The jutsu was held together by hopes and dreams, and a sense of raw desperation. This much was already a blessing. And the branch family wasn't that bad. I had watched the system be born, nurtured, and twisted into what it was today. I understood it better than any of them ever would. I knew their cursed seal, the so-called safeguard of obedience, every contour, every flaw. And I wouldn't be marked for a few more years. By the time they came to brand me, it would already be too late. I was taken outside for the first time on the 23rd day of my new life. Yes, I counted. I was bored. It was a cloudless afternoon, the air dry but warm, the garden path swept clean of petals and dust. My mother carried me in her arms with care, wrapped in layered cloth to shield me from the breeze. She didn't speak much, only murmured greetings as others passed. A few nodded. One or two offered smiles. But none lingered. People were busy, the Second Great War had just ended, and people had much work to do. We passed the edge of the branch compound, where low walls met the inner courtyards. I recognized them from memory alone, memories of watching from above, sealed within the moon. To walk here now, even in someone else's arms, felt surreal. Children trained nearby, a half-dozen of them, barefoot and silent under the guidance of a Hyuga instructor. Their strikes were precise, their forms almost robotic in their discipline. Even the youngest, who couldn't have been older than 7, moved like they'd been drilled since birth. They had. My mother paused a few steps away, just far enough not to disturb them, and sat beneath a blooming apricot tree. The scent drifted around us, faint and sweet. I remained still in her arms, watching with wide, curious eyes. You'll be like them one day, she said softly, not really to me, but more to herself. Maybe stronger, if your father's right. I wanted to laugh, but all I could do was gurgle. Training in the Hyuga clan began early. Chakra sensitivity before age 5. Stances by 6. Sparring by 7. Mastery. That was reserved for those born with the right pedigree. Those marked for greatness by name or by favor. Not me. Not yet. I would have to prove myself worthy, something that would be all too easy. By watching them move, I could already tell how far they had to go. Their strikes were too shallow. Their footwork too rigid. Even their chakra control, impressive by child standards, was still inefficient. I could do better. I would do better. That night, my father returned late. There was mud on his sandals, and the scent of iron clinging to his clothes. Not fresh blood, just the residue of long hours training, or perhaps sparring under supervision. He stepped quietly through the house, as always, and came to check on us where we slept. I was still awake, eyes half closed, listening. She's growing quickly, he whispered, crouching beside my mother's mat. Stronger grip today. She didn't cry once outside, my mother replied, voice low with pride. She watched everything. Like a proper Hyuga, he said. I felt his hand touch the top of my head, gentle, careful. Reverent, almost. They were proud of me. Genuinely so. It wasn't the kind of cold, calculated admiration I had once received from followers or terrified subjects. It was softer. Having a father made me think. Was the reason my own sons turned against me because they had none? Was that the reason the toads could twist them against them? Time moved strangely as an infant. Days bled into nights. Weeks slipped by like the wind, soft, constant, and largely uneventful. But even without words, without conscious control, I could feel the changes. My body was growing stronger. Muscles that once trembled from the effort of lifting my head now supported brief, wobbly pushes. My arms were clumsy, but no longer useless. My legs kicked with purpose. And then, after days of failed attempts and face-first collapses, I began to crawl. It wasn't graceful. In fact, it was embarrassingly awkward. I hated it. The lack of balance. The drooling. The way my mother clapped softly every time I moved a few inches forward like I'd just saved the world. But I kept doing it. Because it meant movement, freedom, independence. It meant control, something I hadn't truly had in a very long time. And with movement came opportunity. I was no longer confined to just listening. Now I could see. I could explore. I could press my hands against walls and floors and feel history I had once only been able to watch. My mother watched me closely, always nearby, always ready to scoop me up the moment I got too close to the wooden stairs or slid too far toward the door. She encouraged me often, never harshly, never with force, just soft words and quiet smiles. On one of those afternoons, the floor was warm with sunlight. She laid out a cushion a few feet away and placed one of my toys, some carved wooden animal I didn't care about, right in the center. "Come on, Yuki," she said gently, her hands resting in her lap. "You can reach it. I know you can." Yuki. That was the name I had been given in his new life. Apparently, it was a rather common name in the Hyuga clan. Not the most original name, given our pale skin and white eyes. We even mostly wore white, the entire clan loved that color, and now I was pretty much named after it. Although it could have been worse, I heard someone call another child, Sakura. Getting that name would have been a disaster. I pushed forward with shaky arms, dragging myself 1 inch at a time across the mat. My balance was still pathetic. My grip inconsistent. But I moved, and she cheered me on. "There you go. That's it, Yuki," she said again, with more warmth now. "You're getting so strong." Strong. They had no idea what strong meant. I had once been strong, now. Even their greatest was nothing compared to me back then. This was the weakest I had ever been. It didn't take long before I was left alone more often. Not for long stretches, never enough to be truly unsupervised, but the older I got, the more I was expected to entertain myself, to nap on my own, to sit quietly while my mother tended to housework or my father trained outside. And I took full advantage of it. I began experimenting in the quiet moments, on the floor of our small home, on my back beneath the rafters, or curled up beside the garden door when no one was looking. I couldn't speak, barely even stand, but I could feel the wind against my skin, the sun kissing my face. The hardness of the floor and the softness of my mother's arms. But what I really wanted to feel was my chakra. Having used my secret divine revival technique, I had left behind my body and my chakra, all my power, leaving me with only my mind and my consciousness. It was a painful loss, but it would hopefully only be temporary. My body still slumbered inside the moon, just waiting to be freed, but there was no way of getting it out. The fact that I was currently reborn like this was already a miracle. It was all thanks to my first rebirth into the ninja world. When my soul merged with Kaguya, a tiny bit of yin chakra was formed, different from Kaguya's own. It was a tiny amount and would have been quickly assimilated. It had not been for the seal, which sealed my chakra so tightly that it stopped the process, allowing me to use it later. So now, I just had this body, this thin bloodline and this tiny amount of chakra. I was a living clone, a second life, starting from nothing. But it beat staying in the moon. I could sense my chakra, like the slow hum of a distant drum. The first time I touched it, it was by accident, just a flicker, a ripple beneath my skin when I grew frustrated trying to reach a blanket. It tingled, almost like a static charge, but it vanished as quickly as it came. So I practiced. Not boldly, not foolishly, just small things. Breathing slowly, holding focus, feeling the flow of chakra in the tips of my fingers. Most children wouldn't start training until they could walk. But I had waited too long already. I wanted my Byakugan. No, I needed it. It was the tool I had always relied on, even more than the Rinne Sharingan. The Byakugan would let me see, truly see, again. Not just light and movement, but chakra, networks, truth. So, I began trying to awaken it. Each time I was left alone, I focused on the pressure behind my eyes. I slowed my breath. I pulled every scrap of chakra I could gather from within this tiny, infant body and directed it there, to the blood, to the nerves, to the place I knew it lived. At first, it hurt. I cursed the impure bloodline. Normally, it shouldn't have been this hard. I had seen countless newborns able to use their Byakugan almost as soon as they were born, yet here I was, months of trying later, and still struggling and hurting. Still, the pain meant progress. Soon I began to feel something. A weight behind my eyes. A flicker of pressure when I focused hard enough. Still no chakra burst, no white field of vision, no clarity of veins or tenketsu. But the gate was there. Closed. Waiting. One afternoon, as the sun sank low and my mother stepped out to speak with a neighbor, I tried again. I lay on my stomach, arms folded beneath me, and closed my eyes. Inhale. Exhale. I called to the chakra within me, little more than mist, but it obeyed. I shaped it slowly, drawing it upward, toward my eyes. Not too fast. Not too sharp. Just enough to make the pressure grow. Then, thump. A pulse. Something sparked at the edge of my vision. A shimmer. A halo of white light. It was gone in an instant. But it had been real. My Byakugan was waking. Chapter 11 Protect with Pride. The main hall of the Hyuga estate was quiet, the kind of silence that pressed against the skin like fog. Tatami mats stretched in perfect lines beneath the gathered elders, their pristine robes untouched by even a thread of dust. Lanterns flickered softly, casting long shadows across the polished floor. This was not a casual meeting. I assume everyone is aware of the child in question, said Lady Haruka, eldest of the main house council. Her voice was smooth, unhurried, but carried the weight of someone used to being obeyed. The branch girl. Yuki. She's only 3, murmured one of the younger men, fingers drumming lightly against his sleeve. And already awakened her Byakugan. That's unheard of in the branch. She also controls her chakra with precision well beyond her years, added another, eyes narrowing. One of the instructors reported she can hold a focus longer than most 6-year-olds. She's been observed mimicking sparring stances, said a woman near the end of the table. From memory alone. No guidance. Lady Haruka nodded, folding her hands in her lap. Her bloodline is clean. No known external dilution. Both parents tested average, though the mother shows particular discipline in sealing. The girl is unexpected. Exceptional, corrected the first speaker, a more senior elder with lines like bark across his face. That is putting it lightly, awakened Byakugan before 3. This hasn't been seen in generations. This is the talent of a clan lord, or at least a clan head level figure. A long silence followed, yet this talent appeared in the breach. He said at last, which makes the upcoming sealing delicate. That word settled like dust. Sealing. Every branch child would, after they turned 3, be sealed. The ceremony didn't happen every year, so some children were 4 or 5 by the time their turn came. But Yuki complicated that. She should not be marked, one voice dared to say, low and firm. She is too valuable. We should begin grooming her for a support role in the main house. To elevate a branch child would weaken our authority, another snapped. It sets a precedent. The mark exists for a reason. And what if another clan finds out about her? The older woman countered. A child with prodigious chakra control and an awakened Byakugan at 3 years old. If she were taken, which is why she must be sealed, it would lower her value, make it less likely she is taken. But it would also lower her value to us. Lady Haruka interrupted at last, voice like steel beneath silk. Their discussion continued for hours, only their own pride kept them from coming to blows as the arguments became heated. It is settled, then, Lady Haruka said, her voice regaining that slow, deliberate rhythm. The sealing ceremony will proceed as scheduled. A murmur of agreement followed. Does it have to be this way? The elder with the weathered face asked, though he already knew the answer. She will be sealed, Haruka said simply. Like the rest. There were no gasps, no protests, only the quiet shifting of fabric and the stillness of old eyes. But her future will not be the same, Haruka continued. Hiyashi is young, still in training, but he will be clan head one day. He will need strength beside him. Obedience. Loyalty. Someone we can trust to never turn against the main house. There was a long pause, and then, "You mean to tie her to him?" "Yes." Haruka nodded. "An arranged bond. Political and practical. A child of the branch sealed by duty, but protected by proximity. It ensures her loyalty. It ensures our control. And if she resents it..." Someone dared to ask. "Why would she? She is a branch, getting sealed is her fate, but she will marry the next clan head, her children will escape her fate, what greater honor is there?" No one argued further. There were no cheers. No applause. Just nods, subtle bows, and the sound of robes shifting as the council rose, their decision sealed with as much weight as the cursed mark itself. Outside, the wind passed through the paper screens with a whisper. Inside, the future of more than one child had just been carved into stone. 2 years later, the seal sat across my forehead. It was truly a masterpiece. Generations of hard work and countless geniuses had poured themselves into making it what it was today. Yet, the seal had changed greatly over the years, from a tool to protect to a tool for control. This had made it less secure, allowing me to influence it secretly. The seal was more than just ink and chakra, it was infusing those with intent, layer by layer, bit by bit, it was art. Dealing with the control elements wasn't too difficult. After all, they applied it on a child, and I might be known as a rare genius, but I was but a child. They would never expect I could influence the sealing, much less know how to do it. After all, even they didn't know it was possible. But as they placed chakra, ink, and intent on my skin, I too placed chakra and intent into the ink, slowly taking control, making tiny subtle changes. That night, my mother tucked me into bed like nothing had changed. Her fingers brushed over my forehead, pausing slightly at the fresh mark. She didn't say anything, but her hand lingered longer than usual. And I reached up and took it. "I'm fine," I said softly, for the first time in weeks. My voice was small, just loud enough for her to hear. She smiled. I closed my eyes. Let them seal me. Let them plan my future, draw maps of my fate, assign my womb to their heir. Let them think they held power. Because, in the end, it didn't matter. The truth was simple. The courtyard was alive with breath and movement, but none of it touched me. I stood where they placed me, among the main family's heirs, a rare thing for a member of the Breach House. But my talent was beyond most. Even the two twins, Hiyashi and Hizashi, were slightly less talented than me. It wasn't much, and likely I wasn't more talented at all. My blood was poor. My parents weren't anything special, they were good people, but they weren't strong. It was simply that I knew what I was doing. I was no mere child, which gave me an advantage in the early stages. I had plans for how to keep that advantage, and even grow stronger, but for now, I was close to the level of those two. Form 5, the instructor called out. We moved together, a line of children shifting into motion. Sand crunched beneath our feet as stances widened, knees bent, and arms swept into position. Right leg slides back at a 45-degree angle. Left arm extended, palm forward. Shoulder low. Chin tucked. The twins, Hiyashi and Hizashi, were directly in front of me. Their movements were mirror images, fluid and compact. Both had excellent posture, though Hiyashi's transitions were slightly smoother. Hizashi's foot placement was just a little shallow on the inward step. It threw his weight off, nothing major, but just enough to notice. I adjusted my timing, not to match them, but to move with just enough variation to avoid perfect synchronization. Arms rotated up, guard position. Twist the hips. Drop the center. We flowed into the forward step. Strike, pull, strike. Chambered elbow, driving palm. I completed the sequence, then reset with the rest of them. No chakra yet. This part was still basic taijutsu formwork. Foundational but important. The instructor moved along the rows with his hands clasped behind his back. His gaze swept over each of us like a cold breeze. Repeat, he said. Again, we shifted into motion. This time, I added a subtle change to my wrist angle, rotating inward, applying the actual contact rotation that the gentle fist required for precision chakra disruption. The others were still drilling by muscle alone. I was practicing the full expression. 3 more repetitions passed. When the instructor called for a break, we all stepped back in sync, straightening as one. Sparring rounds begin in 2 minutes, he said. Pair off with someone of equal level. I remained where I stood, eyes scanning the courtyard. Hiyashi turned, his pale eyes meeting mine. He gave a slight nod. Nothing more. We stepped onto the mat. I bowed. He mirrored it. Begin, the instructor said. Hiyashi's right foot stepped forward in a fast, gliding motion. His palm shot out, aiming for my shoulder, a probing strike to judge distance. I turned my body, shifting just outside the arc, and caught his wrist with an open palm. The contact was light, controlled, and already moving again. He didn't pause. A second strike came from the left, elbow high. I ducked under it and twisted on my back foot, rotating my stance while brushing past him in a half circle. He spun quickly, back into position. His stance had improved, more solid now than it had been months ago. His strikes were fast, clean, and well placed. But he was still thinking one move ahead, not two. I waited for the feint. It came from his right hand, snapping forward, not quite overcommitted. I let it pass, dodging just enough, and stepped into the narrow blind spot it created. My hand touched the side of his robe, no strike, no push, just contact. He stopped moving. I stepped back, letting him reset. His eyes met mine again, a brief flicker of thought passing between us. Again, the instructor said. This time he came in faster. No probing. 3 strikes in rapid sequence, chest, shoulder, lower ribs. I deflected each with open palms, my feet gliding across the mat, absorbing the force through rotation. The 4th strike was different, more refined, slower but heavier. A chakra thread laced into it. He had started integrating actual gentle fist technique. I matched it. Our palms clashed, not forcefully, but precisely. A soft brush of chakra met in the point of contact. The flow rebounded, neither of us pressing deeper. He stepped back. Enough, the instructor said. We bowed. As we left the sparring mat, I glanced at the faint red mark where my hand had brushed his side during the first exchange. He didn't acknowledge it. I returned to my place in line. The training resumed. They continued to slowly drill the stances of the gentle fist into us all. And while it was hardly the most entertaining thing, I did greatly enjoy it, just because I got to move my body. After so long of being sealed up, unable to move, this was amazing. Training ended with a bow. As the instructor dismissed us, the children split off into their groups. The main family heirs turned toward the estate's inner courtyards, laughing and chatting softly under their breath. Some walked in pairs, some trailed behind, but all headed toward their next lesson. We turned the other way. The branch family children, half a dozen of us today, took the east path, through a shaded walkway lined with white banners bearing the Hyuga crest. The scent of pine and old paper filled the air. I fell into step between 2 older boys, both a year or so ahead of me. You almost got Hiyashi today, whispered Kenta, nudging me with his elbow. His tone was playful, not mocking. He was sweating. Who isn't sweating after training? I asked. Still counts, muttered the other boy, Sora, with a grin. Our classroom sat at the base of a modest wooden hall, but even here, the walls were lined with the clan's emblem. Painted onto doors, carved into beams, sewn into the cushions. A large tapestry of the main house crest hung behind the chalkboard, dominating the room. We slipped off our sandals and took our places. Our instructor was already seated at the front. She was older, dressed in simple robes, her hair tied in a tight, practical knot. But her eyes were alert, and her posture crisp. Sit down, she said, clapping her hands twice. You're all late by Hyuga standards. That got a few giggles. She didn't smile, but she wasn't scowling either. Today's focus is your place in the clan, she said, rising to her feet. The Hyuga clan is your home, your duty, and your pride. No matter where you stand, main or branch, you carry our legacy forward. You are not servants. You are protectors. And that is not a lesser role. She tapped the chalkboard with a short stick. 4 kanji were written across it already: loyalty, duty, legacy, unity. These are the cornerstones of what we do, she said. You may not be heirs, but you are still Hyuga. We spent the next hour reviewing symbols, repeating historical names, and practicing the formal speech used when addressing elders. It wasn't all rigid, there were moments when the instructor let us speak freely. A few kids argued over whether the 4th clan patriarch was stronger than the 6th. Someone brought up the time a branch child saved the main house during a bandit attack decades ago. Even the instructor seemed quietly proud as she corrected the details. At the end of class, we stood and bowed together before the crest behind the board. Serve with strength, she said. Protect with pride, we replied. We filed out slowly, the mood lighter than usual. Sora elbowed Kenta. Kenta tried to trip him back. One of the girls was already humming a training song under her breath. I felt a tug at my sleeve and looked over to see a younger girl, Nanako, just turned 4, offering me a round plum candy from her sleeve. It's good luck, she whispered. I saved it. I took it with a nod. The sun had dipped lower, casting long gold beams through the hallways. For a moment, everything felt warm. Chapter 12 Almost a Childhood. Life in the Hyuga clan was one filled with lessons and little time for fun. Kids were expected to be trained ninja, elite killers, we were scouts, spies, and we should be able to do first aid, cook, clean, and more. Not to mention that women had even more to learn, given that we were expected to take care of our household once married. And that was even more so for me. Due to my talent, I was to marry into the main family and become the wife of the next clan head. Which would make me Hinata's mother if I were to go down that route. Honestly, I wasn't too keen on that. I was already a mother, and 2 of my 3 children had turned out badly, so I wasn't really feeling for more. Hiyashi wasn't bad, a bit arrogant, but that was expected of him. He took great care of me, always asking if I was okay, if I needed anything. He was a good kid. Which was almost strange considering how he would turn out later, such a bad father to Hinata. What are you thinking about, my little snowflake? A voice came from behind me moments before a large hand settled on my head, messing with my hair. Father, careful, you will mess up my hair. I couldn't help but complain. It was hard enough to convince everyone to allow my hair to grow out fully, when it didn't look like a mess due to him messing with it. Ha ha ha. Don't be like that, you sitting there, deep in thought, it's just too cute. He teased before finally letting my hair be. I was just thinking about whether or not I would join the academy. I quickly came up with an excuse. Ah, he sighed. I doubt it, the clan has already sent both Lord Hiyashi and Hizashi this year, so the chances of them sending more next year are slim. But don't worry, the academy is mostly a waste of time anyway. I flashed him my best smile. It's okay, if I don't go, I get to spend more time with you and Mom anyway. My words just caused him to laugh happily and mess my hair up further, much to my dismay. I was used to long hair, it felt right, not to mention my Ten no Ito Shibari worked best the longer my hair. And while I couldn't use such powerful techniques right now, I still hope to be able to do it again. Dear, leave little Yuki's hair be, she spends so much time taking care of it. Mom decided to come to my rescue. She stepped out onto the porch, sleeves rolled up, hands still dusted with flour from whatever she was baking. Her hair was tied back in a simple bun, and her smile was soft, worn at the edges by years of service and early mornings, but no less genuine for it. Father leaned back dramatically. Ah, I've been defeated by the alliance of women. Mom rolled her eyes and walked over to sit beside me, brushing a bit of dust off my shoulder. It's not an alliance. You're just mean to her hair. I leaned against her lightly. Her presence always carried warmth, grounding, comforting. I might be countless times older than her, but something about it still felt good. It is an alliance, all against Dad and his hair-ruining ways. I joked as she started to gently comb her fingers through my long, snow-white strands. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind rattle the bamboo chimes above the porch. Somewhere nearby, a group of kids were practicing stances, loud enough to hear grunts and sandal slaps against stone. Probably Kenta and Sora's group. Kenta always yelled when he kicked too hard. I should go train too, I said after a moment. I can't afford to fall behind. Who's behind? Father scoffed. You're faster than most adults I know. But still not fast enough. I stood, brushing off my sleeves. I need to be stronger. Mom gave me a look, gentle but firm. Just remember to be kind too, not only strong. I didn't answer. I just nodded. She was a great woman, she wanted me to be a child, but in this world, there were no innocent childhoods. More so since I knew that it wouldn't be long before war once more took hold of this land. And the third great ninja war would be horrible, needing even children to fight. Waving to them, I took off running. I needed all the training I could get. The gentle fist wasn't bad at all. At mastery, it would allow someone to reach the elite level. And with proper use of the special techniques that came from the gentle fist and the Byakugan, one could reach the level of a clan head, which was the old term for someone who had the strength of an elite jonin. To reach the level of clan lord, or kage, the gentle fist alone wouldn't be enough. But it was still important, it was the first step I could take towards power. And I could take it freely under the protection of the clan. If I wanted to start using the many jutsu I had learned while inside the moon, the clan would never agree. And I had no intention of trying to fight them just yet, I was far from ready. "Hey Yuki, come join us," Nanako shouted as soon as I got over to them. She waved both arms in the air like she thought I wouldn't see her otherwise, despite the fact that she was the only one in our little group who wore a bright pink sash over her training yukata. The others, Kenta, Sora, and Toshi, had already spread out across the courtyard, sandals kicked to the side, feet planted firm in the packed dirt. "You're late," Kenta grinned, bouncing on the balls of his feet. "We already did warm-ups, and Nanako cheated." "I did not," Nanako protested. "You're just sore because I got through the kata faster than you. Because you skipped the breathing breaks, again." I stepped into the circle and dropped my stance. "I'll settle it," I said calmly, letting chakra flow into my palms. "Loser gets water duty." "Oh, now you're in trouble," Sora laughed, backing up and settling into a wide-legged stance. "Yuki's got that look. You're gonna get smacked, Kenta." "Not this time," he said, eyes shining. We paired off, me with Kenta, Nanako with Sora. Toshi volunteered to count us in. 3, 2, 1, go. Kenta came in fast, leading with a low strike meant for my side. I twisted my hips, sweeping his palm aside with an open hand, and stepped in with a light counter. He ducked, feinting a sweep with his leg that forced me to hop back, but I caught the motion early. He'd gotten faster. I adjusted my footing, catching his next strike mid-flow and turning it into a grappling movement. Not to overpower him, just to shift his balance. He stumbled slightly, caught himself, and grinned. Almost isn't enough," I said, and tapped his shoulder, right over a chakra point. He froze. "That was cheating," he muttered as he relaxed, rubbing his arm. "You went for Tenketsu. You would've, too," I said. "You're not wrong." Across the courtyard, Nanako had Sora in a headlock, both of them laughing so hard they could barely stay upright. Toshi was doing cartwheels for no reason at all. This was what we got instead of a normal childhood. It wasn't much, but it was ours. We spent the next hour cycling through drills, switching partners, practicing strikes and blocks until the skin on our palms stung and our sleeves clung to sweat-damp arms. But no one complained. These moments, rare as they were a kind of peace. After our final set, we all collapsed in the grass by the garden wall. Nanako passed around a pouch of salted plums she'd stolen from her older brother's snack drawer. Sora flopped back into the shade with his arms behind his head. "You think they'll let us go to the academy next year?" Toshi asked, chewing thoughtfully. "No chance," Kenta said. "They already sent Hiyashi and Hizashi. They won't send more until they graduate." I tuned out their conversation. I didn't care much for the academy. The clan sent a few kids there, mainly because it was pointless. We fought using the gentle fist, which couldn't be learned there. And the knowledge taught was also not all that useful. The clans all had their own systems for training their young, which had been developed over centuries. So the academy was mostly for civilians, and the clans only sent kids there for political reasons. After all, the Hyuga clan has hundreds of kids of all ages, enough to fill entire classes at the academy. So why even bother at that point? No, we were trained at home, where we would learn to put the main family before anything else, be it ourselves or the village. I'm sure the Hokage didn't like that one bit, but he couldn't do anything. We were little more than slaves to the main house. Not that most treated it like that. Everyone just accepted it. Some people had a little resentment in their hearts, but the main family rarely did anything to earn more. While they sat back and enjoyed the hard work of the branch house, it wasn't like we suffered under them. Nanako flopped down beside me and stretched her legs with a dramatic sigh. "My arms are going to fall off." "You've said that every day this week," Sora muttered. "One day it'll be true," she said, "and then you'll be sorry." Kenta laughed and leaned back on his elbows. "If your arms fall off, we'll just reassign water duty." "Hey, I already lost one match today. Don't push your luck." I smiled faintly at their voices, half listening as I traced a pattern in the dirt with my finger. You're quiet today, Toshi said, nudging my side. Thinking again. Always. He gave a little laugh, but didn't press. None of them ever did. We sat there a while longer before we were called back by one of the older cousins. Time for afternoon chores. Some would go to clean weapons, others to scrub hallways or help in the kitchens. I'd be assigned to scroll copying again, no doubt. Nanako groaned and rolled to her feet. Come on, let's go. If we're late, they'll make us polish the dojo floor again. You mean you'll be late, Kenta teased, jogging ahead. I swear I'll throw my sandal at you. She called after him, already laughing. We followed in pairs, light-hearted but moving with purpose. That was the Hyuga way. Duty, always, just softened when no elders were looking. As we walked past the stone lanterns near the side gate, I glanced back at the courtyard one last time. It was empty now, silent, but I could still feel the energy lingering in the air, scuffed dirt, echoes of laughter, the ghost of a strike still hanging in the space between where Kenta and I had clashed. This was our world, harsh, disciplined, weighted with expectations. But still, in tiny cracks and rare afternoons, it felt almost like a childhood. It was this rare peace that made people fight so hard for the village, because it had been absent during the warring clans period. When clans clashed constantly, and you never knew when you would be attacked. However, this peace was false, hollow, since it had been bought with so much blood. And it wasn't even adults who paid the price, every way was fought with little kids my age. All went out to fight for a village that should have protected them, instead, they gave their lives protecting it. Chapter 13 First Mission. Morning, Sensei, I greeted as I reached the training hall. Morning Yuki-chan, I trust you are prepared for today. Yes, I said, fully aware of what path I had started now. While the village had its academy and genin teams, the clans had their own systems. In particular, the Hyuga clan had a system built over generations to ensure the safety of the main family. Since members of the main family sometimes had to leave the safety of the clan had teams ready to protect them, and that hadn't changed just because the clan had joined Konoha. And if you could fight, there was a good chance you would end up in one of these teams for a while, at least until you started a family, and with a war coming up, nearly all the young kids had to join. Good. You will be joining me and my team from now on and taking on missions for the village, Kazu-sensei said, stepping aside and gesturing for me to enter. The two others turned as I stepped into the room. Both were maybe a year older than me, standing straight-backed with their hands folded neatly in front of them. One was tall and thin, with a long face and a quiet, unreadable gaze. The other was shorter and broader in the shoulders, his arms already crossed in mild defiance. They didn't look surprised to see me. This is Yuki, Kazu-sensei said. She's your new teammate. From today onward, the three of you will train and operate together. You'll learn to rely on each other, and keep each other alive. The taller one bowed his head lightly. Welcome, he said. I'm Iwata. The other gave a short nod. Takeshi. I mirrored the bow. Yuki. That was all the greeting we had, no talk about dreams, or likes, or dislikes. Not in this clan, not in the branch family. Our dreams were decided for us, to serve the main family, our likes were the family, and our dislikes, that was left unsaid. Everyone knew if we were asked, we would not say the truth, none would mention the seal that sat on our foreheads, but it would be the answer for many. Kazu-sensei stepped forward. You're here because you've all shown talent, and because we don't have time to waste. You're not a genin team. You're a Hyuga team. Your job is to protect the clan's interests, guard the main house when called, and operate in tandem with Konoha forces when required. He turned toward a rack of scrolls and pulled one free. We'll begin with a patrol assignment. Standard border sweep along the northern range. 2 days out. Iwata leads the front. Takeshi supports the rear. Yuki, you'll run center with me. This is more about coordination than combat, so don't look for glory. Look to learn. I couldn't help but be slightly excited. After all, this was the first time I would get to leave the clan, and more so, the village. After so long, I would once more get to run around in my nursery. Iwata glanced toward me as we moved to the gear racks. You've trained with Kenta, right? Yes. He's quick, Takeshi added. But reckless. Aren't all boys reckless? I said without really thinking about it. Kazu-sensei let out a short laugh, sharp like flint striking steel. At least you're honest. We finished preparing in silence. The scroll with our assignment was sealed and strapped to Kazu-sensei's belt. Outside, the morning sun was bright and cold, the air sharp with the scent of pine. I followed my new team out of the clan grounds and then through the village itself. It was still far from how it would look when Naruto would be running around. But his father and mother should be around here somewhere, likely still at the academy. Still, the place was entirely different from the clan, so much more lively, and so much less orderly. The clan was a well-oiled machine, everyone had their place, it was in many ways quiet and peaceful, but out there, life and chaos were everywhere. It was hard not to stare at everything. Seeing it like this was so different from seeing it from my prison in the moon. The shops were already opening for the day, their front flaps rolled up as merchants arranged vegetables, tools, and steaming buns under woven awnings. A pair of small children ran past us in the street, laughing as they chased a paper ball, nearly knocking over a man carrying firewood. It was strange, loud, messy, kind of wonderful. Yet, I couldn't forget that it was so temporary, that it was bought with so much blood. This peace, it wouldn't last. Kazu-sensei gave us a look over his shoulder. This is your first time outside of the clan, isn't it, Yuki? Yes, sensei, it's very different out here. Kazu-sensei gave a small grunt of acknowledgement. Don't get too used to it. Most of our missions will take us far beyond the safety of Konoha's walls. Iwata didn't say anything, but his gaze moved constantly, left and right, analyzing everything from the rooftops to the alleyways. Calm, focused. I could already tell he was the type to say nothing unless it mattered. Relax a little, Takeshi said to him. We're not even outside the village yet. That's exactly when people get careless, Iwata said without turning. I like him, I said, grinning. Takeshi groaned. Not another quiet one. Kazu-sensei chuckled under his breath. Quiet ones live longer. If you ever stop talking, Takeshi, you might make it to 20. Please, I'm a Hyuga, and I would die that easily, Takeshi said with far more confidence than someone with fighter-level strength should have. But then again, he was from the Hyuga clan, so among fighters, he was far stronger than most others. So he did have good chances of winning fights as long as he didn't run into skilled warrior-level opponents. We passed the outer gates a few minutes later, greeted by two shinobi with masks pulled halfway down as they munched on skewered dumplings. One of them waved lazily at our team as we stepped beyond the last checkpoint and into the woods. And just like that, the world changed. The trees were tall here, so tall they should be ancient, but they weren't, they were young, fresh, but strong, mighty. I could feel within them the special chakra that helped them grow, would release. I had seen it happen, this forest built almost overnight, and standing now, between those towering trees, I felt all the more impressed by them. Eyes open, Kazu said. Standard patrol route. We'll stop for rest when we hit the ridge clearing. Copy, Iwata said. Takeshi just shrugged and kept walking. I ran center with Kazu-sensei, watching the rhythm of movement between my teammates. Iwata was fast but smooth, never jarring his steps or leaving gaps. Takeshi was more restless, his eyes darting everywhere, his movements not messy, but unpredictable. They were good. Better than I expected. Compared to people like Naruto and Sakura, they were godlike teammates. I guess I had been put in one of the better teams. Kazu, in particular, seemed to be a rather skilled elite-level shinobi. We continued for some time in silence, the only sound the steady rustling of leaves underfoot and the occasional creak of leather straps and metal buckles. Kazu-sensei led us along a winding game trail, one well worn by shinobi boots. The ridge wasn't far now. This part of the forest, he said suddenly, breaking the rhythm, was grown by the first Hokage himself. You can tell by the chakra in the roots. See it? I nodded. It's still strong. I said, looking around openly with my Byakugan. He nodded. Yes, strong chakra is different from most, but all chakra leaves a trace. If you ever see someone leaving a trail of chakra around their entire body without using any jutsu, run. He spent the trip giving advice. Always pointing out this or that. I enjoyed it mostly. Well, it was boring, but being able to jump around on the trees was fun. It was pretty easy, then again. I had great chakra control, it was just the amount being much less than I would have wanted. Long gone were the days of having an endless amount of it. I can only imagine how I would have looked to the current Hyuga clan. After all, back then, I had horrible control, I would have been a blazing sun. We continued to travel for an entire day. Alright, time to rest for the night. Sensei called as we reached a clearing. Hi, we responded as she stopped, though none of us had jumped down to the ground yet and instead remained on the tree. Byakugan. Takeshi loudly activated his dojutsu, carefully scanning the ground below, as for any traps or enemies. Iwata and I did the same, we just didn't scream the fact to the rest of the world. Seems safe, Iwata commented. Seems fairly used, likely a common stopover for Konoha shinobi, I added. Correct, all of you, and you in particular, Yuki. The other two knuckleheads have been told about this, but you did it on your own. Very good, Sensei said with a satisfied nod as he jumped down. We quickly set up camp, or rather the boy did, while Sensei guided me on all the things that was involved, telling me what to look out for, why some things were done in certain ways. It was all important information for a shinobi, yet honestly, I didn't care all that much. I wasn't a fan of camping. I wished I had wood release, then I could just build a house to sleep in. Yet, I wasn't blessed with that. Not unless I could recover the 10 tails. And yeah, that wasn't likely anytime soon. For now, all I could do was play my role well and wait. That night, I also learned that camping as a shinobi is even worse than normal camping. Not only do you have to deal with all the normal downsides of sleeping outside, but you also have to be ready to deal with possible attacks, and you have to spend part of the night awake keeping watch. And even if you get some sleep, you can't sleep too deeply, because you have to get up and be ready to fight instantly in case of an attack. When morning arrived, I felt like crap. My back ached. My arms were sore. There were definitely twigs in my hair. I was cold, slightly damp, and kind of bitter about everything. Honestly, why wasn't there a proper safe house out here? We were only a few hours from the village. If this place got so much shinobi traffic, they could at least install a roof and a futon. Or build a shed. Or something. Instead, I was crouched next to a dying fire, gnawing on a rice ball that tasted like it had lost a war with time. Up and moving, Kazu-sensei called. We have half the patrol loop left, and I want it finished before the midday sun hits. Understood, we all mumbled. Takeshi yawned so hard he nearly dislocated something. Do we have to leap tree to tree the whole time? Can't we just walk like civilians for once? If you want to step on a trap or leave a trail anyone can follow, be my guest, Kazu said, already halfway up the first tree. Iwata was right behind him. Silent as ever. I forced myself to follow, my legs burning slightly as I jumped branch to branch after them. Running from tree to tree looked a lot cooler than it felt. The branches were springy, sure, but not exactly built for comfort. You had to land just right or deal with the jarring rebound through your knees. The bark was uneven, slippery in places, occasionally covered in bird poop, which Takeshi discovered the hard way. Ah, gross. Why this branch? You picked it, Iwata said. Nature is cruel, I muttered as I passed him. We kept our spacing tight but staggered. Iwata up front, scanning ahead. I followed behind Kazu-sensei, who adjusted our route as needed. Takeshi trailed behind, swinging wide occasionally to cover our flanks. This area has seen some movement recently, Kazu said as we paused on a wide branch overlooking a shallow ravine. Yuki, what do you notice? I activated my Byakugan again and focused. There's some residual chakra in the earth. 3 sources, probably 2 or 3 days old. It's faint, no lingering intent. Good. Takeshi. Broken twigs on the slope, uphill side, he said. They slid down, didn't try to hide it. I'd say either they were in a hurry, or really stupid. Both, Kazu replied. Iwata. There's a burn mark in the soil, he said. Someone used a basic fire jutsu, low power, probably for light or intimidation. Solid, Kazu said. Now, what does that tell us? That they didn't expect to be followed, I said. They weren't subtle, Iwata added. But they were smart enough not to linger, Takeshi said, so maybe they were just passing through. Kazu nodded. Exactly. And more importantly, they came from the direction we're headed. That quieted us. Keep your eyes sharp, he said. They are likely another team from the village, but you can never be too sure. We nodded, and the formation resumed. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of movement, tree to tree, with the forest stretching endlessly ahead of us. Occasionally Kazu would stop, drop to the forest floor, and make us examine something, animal tracks, disturbed roots, the way sunlight reflected off unnatural surfaces. Everything was a lesson. Everything had a reason. Shinobi die because they make assumptions, he said at one point, holding up a bent twig that none of us had noticed. Or worse, they stopped noticing. It was exhausting. Mentally, more than anything. Every sound, every shape, every gust of wind was something to be considered. There was no such thing as passive observation, not when you were supposed to keep the main house alive. Finally, just after the sun hit its peak, we reached the old marker post that marked the end of the patrol route, a tall wooden spike driven into the earth, carved with faded clan seals and recent scratch marks from Kanai. Kazu dropped down and tapped the side of the marker. Patrol complete. Good work. Iwata dropped beside him silently. Takeshi flopped to the ground like a dramatic idiot and let out a groan. I hate tree running. You love it, I said. I love the idea of it. I hate the reality. Kazu rolled out a small scroll and made a note with a brush. Yuki, good awareness today. You're adjusting fast. Thank you, sensei, I said. Don't get cocky. I won't. Good. We rested there for just a bit longer before heading back. I didn't complain this time. Not out loud. But I did mentally log every bruise and ache and file them under reasons I deserve a bath and warm rice when I get home. Because honestly, that was one long patrol. That was part 1 of Naruto's Forbidden Legacy journey. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe to Fox Fanfiction. Comment below, should Naruto embrace Kaguya's power or defy it?